Chapter 570. Gong Xiang got on his horse with his spear and started a battle with the pig beast. At this moment, the pig beast let out a shrill scream. However, it was only in the heavenly immortal realm. How could it break free from the imprisonment of Gong Xiang, a half-step immortal emperor? What made the pig beast most confused and angry was that it was a male with a ferocious nature. Why did this half-step immortal emperor mess with it? Even if this immortal emperor liked men, his target was not this pig beast. I was raped by a human expert. The pig beast was crying in its heart. It was so ashamed and angry that it wanted to die. The pink death had completely erupted. At this moment, Gong Xiang's heart was only filled with lust. After finding the pig beast to vent, he became like a violent storm. It was very intense. Bang! Although the pig beast was in the heavenly immortal realm, how could it withstand the devastation of Gong Xiang, a half-step immortal emperor? In less than half a day, the pig beast let out an extremely shrill scream. Then its entire body exploded. This time, the pig beast did not only have its anus exploded, but also its body and flesh. The moment the pig beast exploded, Gong Xiang also let out a furious roar. Then, at this moment, if Morong you could see Gong Xiang's soul, he would see that Gong Xiang's soul had already started to burn. It was really burning. It was as if it was burned by the yin-yang fire. In just an instant, Gong Xiang's soul had already been burned to ashes. An expert, a half-step immortal emperor, died just like that. For experts who were hit by the pink death, unless Morong you treated them or a super expert suppressed them, they could only be mediated by the male yang fire. Otherwise, they would die without a doubt. Although Gong Xiang vented on the pig beast, he did not succeed. Moreover, there was no male yang fire to mediate. Therefore, when the pig beast was killed by him, the pink death had reached its peak and directly burned his soul. At the moment of Gong Xiang's death, Devil's Sect, in a main hall where the soul crystals were stored. Kacha! Gong Xiang's soul crystal directly shattered. At the same time, the few experts who were close to Gong Xiang and had Gong Xiang's soul crystals in their hands also exploded. Gong Xiang is dead. Seeing that Gong Xiang's soul crystal had actually shattered, the experts of the Devil's Sect were stunned at first, somewhat in disbelief. They didn't think that Gong Xiang, a half-step immortal emperor, would die so easily. Moreover, wasn't Gong Xiang in seclusion trying to break through to the realm of deceased emperor? Could it be that he had gone mad from failing to break through? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Immediately, these experts appeared at the place where Gong Xiang was in seclusion. Then they went in, but they did not find Gong Xiang. At this moment, they finally realized that things were not good. If Gong Xiang was not here, then it was really possible that he was dead. Half-step immortal emperor. Even in the Devil's Sect, he was considered a top expert. Moreover, with Gong Xiang's aptitude, he would definitely be able to break through to the Emperor realm. Now that he was dead, it was a huge loss for the Gong family and also a huge loss for the Devil's Sect. What's going on? The experts from the Gong family roared with gloomy faces. Not long after, they already knew that Gong Xiang had left the Devil's Sect. Gong Xiang left the Devil's Sect and was killed. Investigate. Investigate for me. No matter who it is, I will make them pay 10 times the price. Some experts from a Gong family were incomparably furious. Whoosh! A gloomy old man appeared in front of Gong Xiang and looked at everyone with a gloomy face. When this old man appeared, a gloomy aura covered the heaven and earth, causing everyone to unconsciously shiver. How did Gong Xiang die? The old man looked at everyone with a gloomy face. His voice was extremely cold, containing a terrifying killing intent. Everyone was anxious. They didn't know the truth of the matter. They also wanted to know why Gong Xiang had died. Gong Yuan's face was extremely gloomy, and his heart was filled with killing intent. He was Gong Xiang's father and Gong Shiwen's grandfather. Regarding Gong Shiwen's death, he was completely indifferent. However, regarding Gong Xiang, he was extremely furious, because Gong Xiang was already a half-step immortal emperor. Once he broke through to the immortal emperor realm, their strength in the Gong family would be even stronger this time. Could it be that an immortal emperor from the Sacred Gate or the immortal palace killed Gong Xiang? Gong Yuan's face was gloomy, and his eyes were constantly flashing with cold light. Gong Yuan didn't think that Gong Xiang was killed by someone weaker than him. That was impossible. This was because he had hidden a strength clone in Gong Xiang's body. Once he felt that Gong Xiang's life was in danger, his strength clone would be activated. Gong Yuan was an expert of the immortal Emperor realm, and his strength clone was also of the immortal Emperor realm. Other than those powerful immortal emperors, no one could kill Gong Xiang. However, Gong Yuan didn't expect that although Gong Xiang was dead, his strength clone wasn't activated at all. This was because he didn't feel that Gong Xiang was in danger. This was because it was directly used on Gong Xiang's soul. Moreover, the pink morning only filled Gong Xiang with lust. Fundamentally speaking, there was no threat at all. Naturally, Gong Yuan's strength clone couldn't be activated. After Gong Xiang's death, his strength clone naturally dissipated. While Gong Yuan and the others were furious and wanted to investigate the matter, Murongyu had already healed Gong Hong's body. Gong Hong's soul wasn't injured. Since it was just his body, it didn't pose any threat to his life force. Moreover, Gong Hong's soul was already under his control, so there was no need for him to hide anything from him. After all, Gong Hong wouldn't expose these secrets. Even if someone were to search his memories, Murongyu would be able to discover it immediately and have Gong Hong destroy his own soul. Of course, Murongyu wouldn't do this unless it was absolutely necessary. After all, Gong Hong was an expert at the high immortal realm. He was extremely powerful. There was no need for anyone to abandon such a powerful subordinate, especially since Murongyu was an overarching heavenly supreme celestial. Murongyu handed a jade slip to Gong Hong with a cold smile on his face. Gong Hong, return to Feng City first and find Black Tiger and the others. Then, make a large number of copies of the images in the jade slip and spread them throughout the celestial realm. Gong Hong took the jade slip and scanned it with his divine consciousness. Then, a strange expression appeared on his face. There wasn't much information in the jade slip. There were only some ugly behaviors of the Gong family members after they were poisoned by the pink morning. There were 9 heavenly Xian celestials, celestial kings, 2 men flirting with each other, hugging trees and boulders. The most shocking scene was the battle between Gong Xiang, a half-step celestial emperor, and the pig beast. If these scenes were spread to the celestial realm, it would be a huge blow to the Gong family and the devil sect. However, at the same time, Murongyu would become a must-kill for the devil sect. Of course, Murongyu wasn't afraid of the devil sect. After all, he had already sentenced the devil sect to death. Now it was just an appetizer. Gong Hong looked at Murongyu with some horror. He was a little disappointed by Murongyu's means. Go! Murongyu waved his hand and ordered Gong Hong to leave. Gong Hong nodded. His figure suddenly rose into the air and flew toward Feng City. Murongyu sneered as he watched Gong Hong disappear from his sight. He then strode towards the other side of the Wind Sky Mountain. Almost within a day, the entire city of Feng State began to play the contents of Murongyu's jade slip on a loop. At the same time, it was the same in several large states near Feng State. At the same time, these images were quickly spread in the celestial realm. For a time, the celestial realm was shocked. Hey, you know what? The devil sect, one of the 3 giants in the celestial realm, is actually so promiscuous. It's okay to mess around with men, but they even lay their hands on beasts. TSK, TSK. Haha, it said that the person who did that to the pig beast was a half-step celestial emperor. That's a half-step celestial emperor. Are the 3 giants in the celestial realm like this? Fortunately, I didn't join the devil sect. Otherwise, I would be ashamed to be with these people. Shu, looking at these images, it seems that they didn't do it voluntarily. They were forced to do it. In other words, they were poisoned with an aphrodisiac, someone said. It doesn't matter if they were already like this or if they were poisoned, they're just like this. If they were poisoned, what kind of poison is it? It's said that it's a half-step celestial emperor. A poison that can even poison a half-step celestial emperor is really terrifying. In fact, have you ever thought about who poisoned them? The other party is the devil sect. Is the Holy Gate or the Immortal Palace going to be the opponent of the Devil Sect? In a short time, these free images were played in countless large states in the celestial realm. All kinds of discussions continue to spread. No matter what kind of round it was only disadvantageous to the Devil Sect. Not only the Gong family, but the entire Devil Sect. Bang! Gong Yuan slapped the table in front of him into pieces. Even the images in front of him were blasted into powder. Who is it? Investigate. You must investigate thoroughly. I will make him suffer a fate worse than death. Gong Yuan kept roaring, extremely furious. Doing such a thing behind Gong Xiang's back was not only an insult to Gong Xiang, a half-step celestial emperor, but also an insult to the Gong family and the Devil Sect. At this moment, while Gong Yuan was furious, the higher-ups of the Gong family and the Devil Sect had already known about this matter. After watching these images, the higher-ups of the Devil Sect turned pale. This is really outrageous. The higher-ups of the Devil Sect were furious. Gong Yuan, immediately investigate this matter and quickly destroy all these images for me. At the same time, you must find the person who killed Gong Xiang. No matter who he is, even if he is from the Holy Gate or the Immortal Palace, kill him. An elder of the Devil Sect said to Gong Yuan with a pale face. Gong Yuan immediately accepted the order and left the Devil Sect with the experts of the Devil Sect. At the same time, the elders and protectors of the Devil Sect also started to move. Chapter 571. While the immortal world was shaken and the Devil Sect was enraged, Muronyu had already arrived in the depths of the Wind Sky Mountain. This was a dilapidated hall that stood alone on the top of the mountain. It was deserted and dilapidated. When a gust of wind blew, the entire hall shook as if it could be blown over at any time. However, Muronyu knew that even though it was old, not to mention a gust of wind, even an ordinary immortal wouldn't be able to damage it. This was because this palace was protected by a formation. Although it looked broken, it could still last for countless years. At the very least, it wouldn't collapse before the formation lost its effect. Muronyu stood outside the main hall and sized it up. Then, without any hesitation, he stepped into the hall. Even though the palace was in ruins, it was extremely clean and spotless. Even though it had been emptied, there was nothing inside. In fact, a very long time ago, this palace was a ruin, and there were also some good things in it. However, as time passed, all that was left was this worthless and dilapidated palace. However, Muronyu didn't come here to find treasures, so he wasn't disappointed at the palace's state. From the memories of Qing Jian and the others, Muronyu knew that they'd obtained the information about the Heavenly Punishment Command Order from this palace. Nothing? Muronyu circled around the hall and covered the entire place with his divine sense. However, he couldn't find any news, let alone any news about the Heavenly Punishment Decree. Muronyu pondered for a bit and recalled the memories of the group. Back then, they entered the palace together and automatically received the news of the Heavenly Punishment Order. However, it was only a small amount. Muronyu slightly frowned. With a single thought, Zhao Jiqing's group appeared next to him. Zhao Jiqing, the fire-eyed golden ape, and Little Purple all appeared. Only Yu Mengqing was still very weak, so Muronyu didn't let her come out. Murong, what is this place? Zhao Jiqing looked around the ruined palace and asked. Check this place carefully and see if you can find anything out of the ordinary, Muronyu said to them. Could this be another relic? The fire-eyed golden ape immediately beamed with joy. It used to be a ruin, but now it's an ancient ruin. Muronyu smiled. The fire-eyed golden ape became depressed. Ruins and ancient ruins were two completely different things. There could be all kinds of treasures in ruins, but ancient ruins were only things left behind from the ancient times. Aside from ornamental value, they had no other value. Zhao Jiqing nodded, and the three of them began to look around. However, after half a day, they didn't find anything. If they had found anything, they wouldn't have waited until Muronyu. Could it be that only a limited number of people can receive the news of the Heavenly Punishment Order? Aside from Qing Jian and the other three, no one else can know about it? Or could it be that after the message was sent to Qing Jian and the rest, it lost its power and couldn't send any more messages? Yu frowned and muttered to himself. The more he thought about it, the more likely it was. If that was the case, even if Yu destroyed this broken palace, he wouldn't be able to get any news about the heavenly punishment order. However, Qing Jian, Huang Xian, and Han Yu all received the same news, but they didn't find anything valuable. Could it be that the palace master of the heavenly punishment palace had received similar news from other places? Otherwise, based on Qing Jian and the rest news, they wouldn't know where the heavenly punishment order was. Let's go. Let's leave this place. After searching around, Yu still didn't find anything. In the end, he could only lead Zhao Jiqing and the rest out of the ruined palace. And what's that? After Yu left the palace, his powerful divine sense continued to spread out and covered an area of tens of thousands of miles. Suddenly, Yu's divine sense saw a piece of cloth being blown down by a gust of wind from a huge tree in a valley tens of thousands of miles away. When he saw the piece of cloth, Yu instinctively rushed over. However, he soon came to a sudden realization because he felt a sense of déjà vu when he saw the torn piece of cloth. This piece of cloth. Yu frowned and immediately led Zhao Jiqing and the rest towards the valley. Not long after, Yu arrived in front of the piece of cloth. He then reached out his hand and pulled the piece of cloth over. This is it. When he saw the piece of cloth clearly, Yu couldn't help but reveal a strange expression. It wasn't a piece of cloth, but an old sheepskin scroll. Furthermore, it wasn't a complete sheepskin scroll. This sheepskin scroll seems to have appeared in the cultivation realm before. Looking at the quality, it seems to be the same. It seems that when we destroyed the Su family or some other family, there was a similar sheepskin scroll in their treasure vault. The fire-eyed golden ape suddenly said as it looked at the sheepskin scroll in Yu's hand. Yu nodded. He had noticed it long ago. Moreover, the pieces of sheepskin scroll that he had obtained previously weren't just one or two pieces. According to the sheepskin scroll in his memory, he felt that it should be something like a treasure map. Of course, that was what Yu thought. However, because those sheepskin scrolls were in the cultivation realm, he naturally didn't care about them after he ascended. After all, those were items from the cultivation realm. To him now, the items from the cultivation realm, even if they were ancient relics, were nothing to him. Moreover, those sheepskin scrolls weren't complete. However, Yu didn't think that the treasure map was as simple as a relic from the cultivation realm. How could a sheepskin scroll that appeared in the immortal realm be a relic from the cultivation realm? Everyone, search and see if there are any similar sheepskin scrolls nearby. Yu put away the sheepskin scroll and said to everyone. Thus, Yu and the others searched in all directions with the ruined hall as the center. However, after half a month, they searched almost the entire Wind Sky Mountain, but didn't find anything. In a few months, the images of Gongxiang outside became more and more intense. However, the people from the Devil Sect also made a move. After all, the Devil Sect was one of the 3 giants of the immortal realm. After they made a move, they gradually suppressed the images of Gongxiang in the immortal realm. Gradually, those images stopped appearing in the immortal realm. However, now almost the entire immortal realm knew about Gongxiang's matter. Moreover, those images didn't appear in public, but it didn't mean that they really disappeared. In secret, there were probably countless people who copied a large number of images. However, due to the strength of the Devil Sect, they didn't dare to show it in public. In just half a month, the Devil Sect's losses were very serious. Their face, dignity, and so on were all lost because of Gongxiang's incident. The initiator of all of this, the chief culprit, was Yu. Of course, the people from the Devil Sect hadn't found out about Yu yet. It was only half a month. Even if they came to the Wind Sky Mountain, it would still take a long time. However, with the power of the Devil Sect, they had already guessed the location of Gongxiang's accident. At this time, Gong Yuan was killing his way to the Wind Sky Mountain. When Gong Yuan arrived at the Wind Sky Mountain, Yu, Zhao Jiqing, and the others had already returned to Feng City. As soon as Yu appeared in Feng City, Ming-Ji came over and said to Murong-Yu in a deep voice, Murong, you went a bit too far this time. Murong-Yu frowned slightly and said, What's the matter? The opponent is the Devil Sect. Once they find out that you leaked those images, you and even the entire heavenly court will be destroyed overnight. Murong-Yu's face suddenly became gloomy. At that time, he only cared about taking revenge on the Devil Sect and forgot about this matter. He might not be afraid of the Devil Sect's revenge, but what about the heavenly court? How could they fight against the Devil Sect? But soon, Murong-Yu smiled and looked at Ming-Ji. You're saying that once, then for the time being, they won't be able to find out that it was me who did it? At least on the surface, they won't have any evidence. I've already cleaned up your remaining aura for you. Even if the immortal emperor of the Devil Sect arrives at the Wind Sky Mountain, they won't be able to see what happened. Ming-Ji said lightly. Murong-Yu was overjoyed. This, I really have to thank you. If it wasn't for you, the heavenly court would have been destroyed. On the Wind Sky Mountain, Gong Yuan roared angrily. Who did it? Who did it? What made Gong Yuan furious was that they couldn't reconstruct the situation on the Wind Sky Mountain with their methods. They were unable to reconstruct the situation at that time. In other words, they were unable to see who had done it. In this way, they could take revenge. Even with their strength, they could find out that this matter was related to Murong-Yu. Even if they confirmed that it was Murong-Yu who did it, they couldn't do anything. But without direct evidence, they didn't dare to deal with Murong-Yu. Don't forget, Murong-Yu was a member of the Heavenly Punisher Palace. He was also the Punisher of the Huaxia self-cultivation world and the Palace Master of the Heavenly Punisher Palace. In the Immortal Realm, there were only 3 giants. But the 3 giants knew that the Heavenly Punisher Palace's strength was definitely not below them. If the Heavenly Punisher Palace in the Heaven Realm was included, even if the 3 giants worked together, they wouldn't be a match for the Heavenly Punisher Palace. They didn't even have the qualifications to become part of the Heavenly Punisher Palace. However, people from the God Realm couldn't descend to the Mortal Realm. Therefore, they were only the 3 giants of the Immortal Realm. Otherwise, the Heavenly Punisher Palace would have already unified the Immortal Realm. Of course, without the Heavenly Punisher token, the Heavenly Punisher Palace was powerful, but it wasn't alone. In the Heaven Realm, there were naturally powerful forces. Chapter 572. Investigate. Use all your power to find the culprit. Gong Yuan's roar spread far and wide in the Wind Sky Mountain. Countless mountains exploded one after another. One could see how furious Gong Yuan was. However, no matter how angry he was, Murong-Yu didn't know. At this time, Murong-Yu and the others were all in the Hichu, Luoshu world. Hooligan, have you gathered all the fragments of the sheepskin scrolls? Looking at the fragments of the sheepskin scrolls in Murong-Yu's hands, Yu Mengqing, who was still pale and weak, asked, I feel that all the sheepskin scrolls have been gathered. Now, let's see what this treasure map is. While speaking, Murong-Yu began to piece the sheepskin scrolls together. Whoosh! When Murong-Yu put the fragments of the sheepskin scrolls together, they suddenly broke free from Murong-Yu's hands, as if they were caught by an invisible hand, and flew directly into the void. Murong-Yu was taken aback. Just as he was about to grab the sheepskin scrolls, he saw that the fragments of the sheepskin scrolls were emitting a soft light. A soft light was emitted from the sheepskin scrolls. At this moment, everyone only saw that these old and tattered sheepskin scrolls were undergoing a shocking change. Wherever the soft light passed, these old and tattered sheepskin scrolls were now brand new. All of them looked brand new, without any trace of tatter color. Even to the surprise of Murong-Yu and the others, these sheepskin scrolls began to quickly gather together. Then, Murong-Yu and the others saw that these sheepskin scrolls, which were originally 7 or 8 fragments, had already gathered together and finally formed a complete, brand new sheepskin scroll about the size of a palm. After the multiple fragments merged into one, the soft white light on the sheepskin scroll also disappeared. Then this brand new sheepskin scroll slowly fell to the ground. Murong-Yu stretched out his hand and grabbed it from the air. He opened it in his palm and looked at it. Zhao, Jiqing, and the others also came over. Nothing? Morong, did you put in the wrong direction? This is the back. When Zhao, Jiqing, and the others looked over, they saw that there was nothing on the sheepskin scroll. It was a brand new sheepskin scroll. It was as white as new, without a single symbol or map. One must know that when these sheepskin scrolls were still fragments, there were some map-like symbols on them. Therefore, they all suspected that Murong Yu was holding it upside down. Big gangster, what's wrong with you? Didn't you hear us? Yu Mengqing couldn't help but ask when she saw Murong Yu staring at the empty map in his hand. Hearing Yu Mengqing's words, Zhao Jiqing and the others also felt that it was strange and couldn't help but look at Murong Yu. At this moment, Murong Yu looked very focused, as if he was looking at the empty piece in his hand. The sheepskin scroll that was empty in everyone's eyes seemed to contain countless information in his eyes. He seemed to be fascinated by it. Could it be that there's really something on it? Everyone looked over again, but they still didn't find anything. Then they probed with their divine senses again. Boom. Just as their divine senses probed the sheepskin scroll in Murong Yu's hand, a powerful force suddenly appeared. Before Zhao, Jiqing, and the others could react, their divine senses were pulled away. Zhao, Jiqing, and the others only felt as if their divine wills were being grabbed by something and were being pulled forward at high speed. Therefore, they couldn't help but be shocked. Just as they were about to react, the scene in front of them changed, and they actually came to an unfamiliar space. What a beautiful place! By the time their spiritual wills entered this space, the force had already disappeared. However, Zhao, Jiqing, and the others didn't retract their divine senses because they realized that the scenery here was extremely beautiful. Tall mountains and flowing water, green mountains stretched endlessly. The mountains and rivers were beautiful, dangerous peaks were handsome, and hundreds of flowers vied for beauty. From afar, this place looked like a paradise. The scenery was so beautiful. At this moment, Zhao Jiqing and the others realized that they seemed to be overlooking the vast land below from the boundless sky. For a moment, everyone was stunned. They were intoxicated by the beautiful scenery that was like a paradise. What a beautiful place. What is this place? Yu Mengqing muttered to herself as she looked at the beautiful scenery below. You are now inside that piece of sheepskin scroll. This is the space of the sheepskin scroll, a real, yet illusory world. At this moment, Murong Yu's voice rang in their ears. Immediately, Zhao Jiqing and the others saw Murong Yu appear in front of them. Immediately, Zhao Jiqing and the others' divine senses transformed into a body and stood next to Murong Yu. Big brother, what is going on? Where's this place? Little Z asked crisply. This is the space of the sheepskin scroll. In other words, this is the treasure map, and we are in the treasure map. The treasure in the sheepskin scroll should be in one of the places in this area. Murong Yu said with a smile. I don't understand. Little Z shook her head and looked at Murong Yu with a puzzled face, waiting for Murong Yu's explanation. Murong, what you're saying is that what we're seeing now is not real. It's an illusion. But were they real? And the treasure in the sheepskin scroll is among them? Zhao Jiqing looked at Murong Yu and said with a smile. Murong Yu smiled and nodded. Sister Jiqing, I still don't understand. Little Z was a little depressed. Yu Mengqing smiled and explained, Little Z, what we see now is not a real world, but a picture. Or rather, this is a map that looks more real. It is very lifelike and very real. Little Z thought for a moment, then nodded and said crisply, I understand. What we see is just a map, but this map is real, right? Murong Yu smiled and said, Little Z is so smart. Little Z rolled her eyes and snorted. Big brother, you are making fun of Little Z. Little Z is the last to understand. Aren't you implying that Little Z is stupid? The fire-eyed golden ape laughed. If we were talking about stupidity, the big black dog is the stupidest. Hearing this, Little Z nodded in agreement and said, Little Black is indeed very stupid. Murong Yu was a little speechless. Old Black Dog is not here, and you are talking bad about him. If he finds out, he will definitely fight with you for 3,000 rounds. The fire-eyed golden ape laughed. Now that I have broken through to the golden immortal realm, I am not afraid of the big black dog anymore. Murong, you said, the big black dog is about to break through to the 9 heavens Xian immortal realm. Once he wakes up, you might not be his opponent again. The fire-eyed golden ape was instantly depressed. Looks like I have to work hard to cultivate. After this incident, I will definitely work even harder in my cultivation. But, my lord, since this is a map, then where is the treasure? Do you see the highest peak in front? If I'm not wrong, the treasure should be in or near that peak. Murong, you said as he pointed at the peak so high that the peak couldn't be seen. Even if we know the treasure is there, how can we find this place? The immortal realm is too big, and this place is not even in the immortal realm. Murong, you smiled and said, don't worry, this place is definitely in the immortal realm. We can find it. Everyone's eyes lit up. Do you know where this place is? Murong, you said with a smile. Maybe. Please let me keep it a secret for now. Yu Mengqing snorted coldly. Keep showing off. I don't want to know. Sister Jiqing, let's leave this place. Don't be a hooligan. Zhao Jiqing nodded, and then left the space with Yu Mengqing. Not long after, Murong Yu and the others also left. Murong, you really know where it is? What kind of treasure is there? Should we go out and take a look? Zhao Jiqing could not help but ask after her divine sense left. I might know where it is, but don't be fooled by the beautiful scenery. It is a dangerous place in the immortal realm. We must go, but we must be prepared before we go. Before that, we must find the soul grass. At this point, Murong Yu's face turned gloomy. The most important thing now was to find the soul grass and heal Yu Mengqing's soul. Otherwise, Yu Mengqing would be in danger at all times. Let's go back to Lingnan City and see if the merchants there have the soul grass. Murong Yu left the Hichu Luoshu world with a gloomy face. After arranging some matters in the heavenly court and asking Ming Ji to temporarily guard Feng province, Murong Yu left Feng City and returned to Lingnan City. Lingnan City was one of the top 10 states in the immortal realm. Although the merchants in Lingnan City were not the headquarters, they were still large branches. If the top 10 merchants have no news of the soul grass, then I can only look for it myself. While I'm at it, I'll deal with the heavenly punishment order. Murong Yu thought as he walked towards the pinnacle chamber of commerce. The heavenly punishment order. Murong Yu already knew about the heavenly punishment order. Could it be that the treasure on the map in the sheepskin scroll was the Tian Fa writ? Chapter 573. The Heavenly Punishment Order. That's right. Murong Yu had already received news about the Heavenly Punishment Order from the Sheepskin Scroll. To Zhao Jiqing and the rest, the Sheepskin Scroll was just an ordinary topographic map and did not contain any special information. However, that was not the case for Murong Yu. When Murong Yu held the Sheepskin Scroll in his hands, he was puzzled because he could not see anything, not even a symbol or a scratch. However, he quickly used his divine telekinesis to probe the scroll. Just like Zhao Jiqing and the rest, Murong Yu's divine telekinesis was instantly pulled in by a strong force. At the same time, a message appeared in Murong Yu's mind. The Heavenly Punishment Order. There was not much information in this message, and it was only a few sentences. However, it told Murong Yu that the sheepskin scroll was pointing to the place where the Heavenly Punishment Order was located. Furthermore, the sheepskin scroll in his hands was the key to entering the space where the Heavenly Punishment Order was located. Without this key, even if someone knew where the Heavenly Punishment Order was, they would not be able to enter. Because of this, Murong Yu was not in a hurry to find out about the Heavenly Punishment Order. However, the Heavenly Punishment Order was too shocking, and Murong Yu did not want Zhao Jiqing and the rest to know about it for the time being. After all, knowing these things wouldn't do them any good. It would only do them harm. The most important thing now was to find the soul grass. Murong Yu thought to himself as he quickly entered the pinnacle chamber of commerce. Please forgive me for not going out to welcome you, esteemed guest. Murong Yu had just stepped into the pinnacle chamber of commerce when a voice rang in his ears. At the same time, Murong saw the supervisor of the Pinnacle Chamber of Commerce, Dong Yuan, walking over with a smile. Murong smiled and said, "Long time no see, Supervisor Dong Yuan. Business is booming." Dong Yuan laughed and gestured for Murong to enter. However, Murong saw a flash of surprise in his eyes. In fact, Dong Yuan was truly shocked, because he noticed that Murong strength had actually surpassed him in all aspects. When they first met, Murong was very weak. Even though he was only an overarching heavenly supreme celestial, Murong was still as weak as an ant. At that time, Murong might only be a golden immortal. However, how long had it been? Perhaps in less than 1,000 years, Murong's cultivation had already surpassed his. If Dong Yuan were to find out that Murong's true strength was greater than that of an ordinary nine-heavens Shin immortal, and that he could even fight against an immortal king when he used all his strength, how shocked would he be? Of course, the faster Murong's strength improved, the happier Dong Yuan was. This was because it proved that his judgment was not wrong. He had not misjudged Murong. After all, Murong's previous transactions weren't considered a big deal in front of Dong Yuan's manager. After all, even a few billion grade 1 celestial veins was nothing. However, at that time, Dong Yuan could see that Murong's potential was limitless. For this reason, he wanted to befriend Duan Ling Tian. Now, he was pleasantly surprised to find that he had made the right choice. As long as Murong was given enough time, Dong Yuan believed he would become even stronger. Dong Yuan asked, "Murong, what do you need this time? Divine weapons, Dharma treasures, or materials?" Dong Yuan went straight to the point after the two of them sat down in the house. Murong nodded. "May I know if Supervisor Dong Yuan has any soul grass?" Murong also said straightforwardly, "Soul grass." Dong Yuan frowned slightly. Soul grass is an extremely rare natural treasure that can heal one's soul. It's rare even in the celestial realm. We don't have any here, but I can help you ask the headquarters if they have any information about soul grass. However, soul grass is too rare, so don't get your hopes up. Murong nodded with a gloomy face. If even a top merchant association like Pinnacle Merchant Association didn't have soul grass, then it would be difficult. Dong Yuan left hurriedly to ask the headquarters of the Pinnacle Chamber of Commerce. "I hope Pinnacle Merchant Association has soul grass." Murong waited with a gloomy face. Half a day later, Dong Yuan walked in again, but he didn't look too good. "How is it?" Murong knew the answer when he saw Dong Yuan's expression. However, he still asked, "Murong, I'm sorry, Pinnacle Merchant Association doesn't have soul grass. We don't even have any information about soul grass. I'm sorry I can't help you." Dong Yuan said apologetically. Murong shook his head and smiled bitterly. Soul grass is very rare, so it's normal that Pinnacle Merchant Association doesn't have it. However, I really need soul grass now, so I hope you can help me keep an eye out. Dong Yuan nodded. Pinnacle Merchant Association is already keeping an eye out for soul grass. We'll inform you as soon as we have any information. Moreover, other merchant associations might have soul grass. You can go take a look at them. 3 days later, Murong returned to his manor in the Heavenly Punishment Palace with a gloomy face. In these 3 days, he asked the top 10 merchant associations of the immortal world, but they didn't have any information about soul grass. However, these merchant associations promised Murong that they would keep an eye out for soul grass. The top 10 merchant associations didn't have soul grass, and they didn't even sell soul grass. As such, Murong didn't have any hope that they would have any information about soul grass. However, Murong's face became even more gloomy. Without soul grass, Yu Mengqing's soul couldn't be restored. Without it, Yu Mengqing would still be in danger, and her life could be in danger at any time. After asking Steward Ma, he didn't have any information about soul grass. This made Murong even more worried. After returning to Feng City, Murong instructed He Hu and the others to purchase soul grass and information about soul grass from the entire immortal world. He Hu, after purchasing soul grass at a high price, "I'll owe you a favor," Murong said to He Hu. A hint of surprise flashed across He Hu's face. Although he didn't know how valuable Murong Yu's favor was, he didn't ask. A day later, the news of Murong Yu purchasing soul grasses and soul grasses at a high price quickly spread throughout the immortal world. At the same time, news of Murong Yu becoming the master of the heavenly court spread like wildfire. Of course, the average person didn't even care about Murong Yu. Even if they paid attention to the news of him purchasing soul grasses, they only cared about the large sum of money involved. As for Murong Yu's favor, what was the use of a favor from a puny, overarching, heavenly supreme celestial? Naturally, this was what most people thought. However, when those who knew about Murong Yu's divine physician and divine physician heard about Murong Yu's request for soulgrass, almost everyone began to inquire about soulgrass. These people didn't care about Murong Yu's high price. Of course, they believed Murong Yu's so-called huge sum of money. After all, it was extremely shocking. After all, Murong Yu's identity as a divine physician was known for all to see. However, what they cared about was Murong Yu's favor. A favor from a divine physician. This favor was equivalent to a life. If Murong Yu owed someone a favor, that person would at least have an extra life. After all, Murong Yu's medical skills could even bring the dead back to life. Therefore, many people began to inquire about soulgrass. However, soulgrass was a legendary item. How could it be so easy to find? Not long after news of Murong Yu becoming the master of the heavenly court and purchasing soulgrass at a high price spread swoosh. 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 3 figures appeared in the sky above Feng City in just a blink of an eye. At this moment, Ming Ji's expression changed slightly. His figure flashed, and he was about to rush out because he sensed that the 3 people who were rushing over were immortal emperors. At this moment, Murong Yu's voice rang in Ji Ming's ears. Ji Ming, don't attack. They are friends. At the same time, Murong Yu appeared in the sky above Feng City. Shangguan Bo from the Shangguan clan, Yi Feng from the Yi clan, and Guanjie are here to pay respects to the master of the heavenly court. A clear voice rang in Feng City. At the same time, the terrifying aura of Shangguan Bo and the other 2 celestial emperors spread out wildly. Shangguan Bo and the other 2 celestial emperors were not here to pick a fight. Although their auras were powerful and terrifying, there was no killing intent in them. They just wanted people to know that they were celestial emperors. Brother Shangguan, Elder Yi, Senior Wan. Murong Yu walked over and greeted them gratefully. Shangguan Bo and the others purposely revealed their identities as immortal emperors. This wasn't a show-off, but to tell the heavenly court and others that Murong Yu had 3 immortal emperors as friends, and that he had the backing of 3 powerful factions. If Murong Yu wasn't afraid of death, then he could come find trouble with the heavenly court. Shangguan Bo and the other 2 celestial emperors were helping Murong Yu deter those forces and individuals who harbored ill intentions towards the heavenly court. With the 3 celestial emperors and the forces behind them, ordinary forces would not dare to touch the heavenly court. In this way, the heavenly court could develop and grow without worry. Brother Murong, you are so mean. Why didn't you tell us about the establishment of the heavenly court? We didn't even know about it. Shangguan Bo patted Murong Yu's shoulder and smiled. It's just a small force. I'm too embarrassed to ask. Murong Yu smiled and went to the heavenly court with Shangguan Bo and the other 2 celestial emperors. Brother, I heard that you need soulgrass. Could it be that your soul has been damaged? Shangguan Bo asked Murong Yu with a solemn expression after the host and guests took their seats. At the same time, Elder Yi and the quiet Guanjie also looked at Murong Yu with concern. Murong Yu's heart flashed with a touch of emotion. Although Shangguan Bo and the other 2 celestial emperors were lofty celestial emperors, they had never treated Murong Yu as a junior. Instead, they treated him as a friend. They were true friends with Murong Yu. Chapter 574. Murong Yu's face darkened as he gave a rough explanation of Yu Mingqing's situation. Thank you for your help, elder brother. There's no problem with my soul. As for the soul grass, it's because of one of my wives. The devil sect? After Morong finished, Shangwan Bo and the other two were shocked. Although they were very powerful, they were the top forces in the immortal world. However, the Devil Sect was a colossal existence, even more terrifying than the super forces. There were only 3 colossal existences in the immortal world. Murong Yu's eyes flashed coldly, his killing intent overflowing. So what if the Devil Sect is one of the 3 colossal existences in the immortal world? I must destroy them in this life. F***CK. Shangwan Bo slapped his thigh. Well said. So what if the other party is the Devil Sect? Are they the only ones who can kill, but we can't take revenge? I'll support you in this matter. So, the incident with the Devil Sect's Gong Xiang was your masterpiece. Elder Yu wasn't as excited as Shangwan Bo. He only smiled at Murong Yu. Murong Yu didn't say anything, only nodded. Murong Yu didn't hide anything from the 3 of them. Ha ha ha, what a fun thing. It's a pity we weren't there. Guanjie laughed. The 3 of you, the Devil Sect, is powerful. Although your forces are strong, it's not that I'm looking down on you, but the 3 of you combined aren't a match for the Devil Sect. So, to avoid unnecessary losses, it's best that you don't interfere in this matter. Murong Yu looked at the 3 of them and said with a serious expression, "What are you talking about? So what if the other party is the Devil Sect? Our Yi family isn't necessarily afraid of them. Moreover, even if they want to destroy us, even if we can't destroy them, we can still make them lose a layer of skin." Elder Yi said indifferently. However, his words had already expressed his determination to support Murong Yu. People from the Devil Sect should all die. Guanjie didn't say anything, only said this sentence with a murderous intent. Since it's like this, I'll thank you. However, the Devil Sect won't do anything to me for now. We're safe for now. However, about my wife, I wonder if you have any news about the Soulgrass? Shangwan Bo and the other 2 shook their heads. They had heard about the Soulgrass, but they had never seen it before. They had never even heard of anyone possessing the Soulgrass. They even doubted if such a soul herb even existed in this world. Brother, your medical skills are amazing. Don't you have a way to repair the soul? Shangwan Bo couldn't help but ask. Murong Yu nodded. Of course it's possible, but it's still a bit lacking, so it's better to just use the Soulgrass. Of course, if it wasn't for the Soulgrass, Meng Qing would be fine. Murong Yu didn't explain in detail. Moreover, he had already decided that if there was no news of Soulgrass in the near future, then he would go into seclusion. The stronger he was, the more likely he would be able to repair Yu Mengqing's soul. In a manor in Feng City, the Devil Sect's immortal emperor, Gong Yuan, was sitting in the hall with a murderous look on his face. Elder Gong, in Feng City, in addition to Shangwan Bo and the other 2 immortal emperors, there are now 10 immortal emperors and countless immortal monarchs. Moreover, experts of various levels are constantly pouring in. I believe that soon, there will be dozens of immortal emperors in Feng City. An intelligence officer of the Devil Sect reported to Gong Yuan in a deep voice. Bastard. Gong Yuan was so angry that he slapped the table in front of him into powder. With the help of the Devil Sect's huge power, Gong Yuan finally found out that Murong Yu was the one who killed Gong Xiang and created those images. Although there was no direct evidence, Gong Yuan still came to Feng City to capture Murong Yu. So what if there was no evidence? As long as he captured Murong Yu, with his strength, he would be able to read his memory. At that time, he would be able to kill him. However, when Gong Yuan came to Feng City, he found that there was an immortal emperor expert in this small city. At the same time, the news that Murong Yu was the punishment enforcer of the Heavenly Penalty Palace had reached Gong Yuan's ears. Due to these factors, Gong Yuan could not wait to kill Murong Yu immediately. However, he had some scruples and hesitated. After hesitating for a while, Gong Yuan regretted it. He found that after Murong Yu spread the news that he was buying Soulgrass at a high price, more and more experts came to Feng City. What other identity does Murong Yu have? These experts are not coming for the Soulgrass, are they? Gong Yuan suppressed the anger in his heart and looked at the intelligence officer of the Devil Sect. Murong Yu is a divine doctor and divine doctor. His medical skills are amazing. It is said that not long ago, Murong saved many people in a relic in the Dead Sea of Xing province. Among them, there are tens of thousands of immortal emperors who owe him a favor. Some of these people who came to Feng City are experts who owe Murong a favor. Others want Murong divine doctor and want to get the soul grass. They want Murong to owe them a favor. Gong Yuan's face darkened. Is Murong medical skills really so amazing? If so, it will be difficult to take action. Leave. Keep an eye out for Murong in Feng City. Gong Yuan ordered the intelligence officer of the devil sect to leave. Gong Yuan sat alone in the hall. His face was gloomy, and his eyes were flashing with cold light. Endless killing intent filled the hall. Bastard! Who is this Murong? So many experts have come. If I take action, even if I can kill Murong, I will never be able to escape from Feng City. Even the devil sect will have to think carefully if they want to deal with him. In just a few days, Feng City, which used to be dominated by celestial kings, welcomed more than 100 celestial emperor realm experts. Among them, there were countless immortal monarchs and immortal kings. A large portion of them had come because of the favor Murong had done for them. However, there was also a portion that had come because of Murong's medical skills. However, the current Murong wasn't in the mood to treat any of them at all. There is no news about the soul grass. Murong's face was gloomy. In the past few days, countless people came to Feng City, but there was no news about the soul grass. At the same time, the top 10 chambers of commerce in the immortal realm, including Murong, did not have any news. Although countless people wanted to get Murong's favor, there was no news about the soul grass at all. Many people had not even heard of the soul grass, let alone seen it. After entering Hichu Luoshu, Murong was using the life force to nourish Yu Mengqing's soul. Although it could not repair Yu Mengqing's broken soul, it still had some effect. Big Rogue, I will be fine. Don't be unhappy because of me. These days, Yu Mengqing saw that Murong did not smile, so she comforted him. Murong squeezed out a smile and said, I'm not worried about this because I believe that I can repair your soul. Yu Mengqing smiled and said, That's good. Because of her soul, Yu Mengqing was very weak. After Murong nourished her soul for a while, she fell into a deep sleep. Now, she spent most of the day sleeping. Since there is no news about the soul grass, should I go and see the heavenly punishment order or cultivate in seclusion? After leaving Yu Mengqing's room, Murong muttered to himself, Let's go and see what the heavenly punishment order is like. It seems that the chaotic celestial record is still unable to break through in a short time. Murong felt a little helpless. If it was an ordinary martial art, Murong could directly swallow the immortal expansion pill, and his strength would quickly rise to the 9 heavens Xian immortal realm. He had also tried to swallow the immortal expansion pill, but it was useless. As long as the chaotic celestial record was not broken through, even if he ate a few immortal expansion pills, he would not be able to break through. Was this a good thing or a bad thing? Cultivating the chaotic celestial record did not have any bottlenecks, and his strength would increase tremendously. However, he could not rely on these pills to increase his strength. Nothing is perfect in this world. Murong sighed and reappeared in Feng City. Black Tiger, spread the word that the matter of the soul grass is still valid. However, I won't be making house calls for the time being. Those who want to seek treatment from me can wait in Feng City if they want. If they don't want to, they can leave immediately. At the same time, I welcome them to join the heavenly court and become a part of it. Now that Murong's reputation had spread and more experts were coming to Feng City, Murong would not let go of this opportunity to recruit them. It would be foolish not to take advantage of this opportunity to increase the strength of the heavenly court. Yes, Black Tiger exited the room excitedly. Previously, Black Tiger had been forced to submit to Murong because he had been controlled by his soul. Now, he was truly willing to submit to Murong. In fact, they even worshipped Murong. After all, Murong was only an overarching heavenly supreme celestial, but he had attracted so many experts. How many people in the celestial world could achieve this? The celestial paradise. Fairyland. Just like the literal meaning, this place was simply like a fairyland on Earth. The scenery was so beautiful that it made people unconsciously intoxicated. It could be said that the celestial paradise was the most beautiful place in the celestial world. It was also one of the most dangerous places in the celestial world. This was because the celestial paradise was also known as the land of perils. The celestial paradise was one of the land of perils in the celestial world. The beautiful scenery often hid terrifying murderous intent. It could kill without leaving a trace. Chapter 575. The immortal realm was one of the most dangerous places in the immortal world. It was extremely dangerous, and ordinary people wouldn't step into it. The dangers of the immortal realm didn't mean that there would be a large number of traps and ferocious beasts. On the contrary, these things didn't exist in the immortal realm. It was to the extent that the immortal realm seemed to be a paradise on the surface. The scenery inside was beautiful, and people couldn't help but be intoxicated by it. In such a beautiful place like a paradise, where was the danger? Why did it become one of the most dangerous places in the immortal world? This was because the flow of time in the immortal realm was extremely terrifying. As soon as one stepped into the immortal realm, they would clearly feel the rapid flow of time. In fact, in some places, the flow of time could reach 100 million years in an instant or even more terrifying speed. In the immortal world, even immortal supremes weren't immortal. They also had a lifespan. Once their lifespan was exhausted, they would also die. Moreover, the flow of time in the immortal realm was different from normal acceleration because it was synchronized with the immortal world's time. For example, Morongi used Hichu Luoshu to speed up time cultivation. That kind of time acceleration was actually a space of its own that isolated it from the outside world's time. In fact, the space where time was accelerated was already considered another space. However, the time acceleration in the immortal realm didn't have the effect of accelerating time. In layman's terms, the time in the immortal realm was the same as the time outside the immortal realm. However, in reality, the time in the immortal realm was flowing rapidly, and the lifespan of those who entered the immortal realm was also rapidly decreasing. For example, if a person entered the immortal realm where the flow of time was 100 million times faster than the outside world, in the eyes of outsiders, only an instant had passed, and the person himself only felt that an instant had passed. However, in reality, his lifespan had decreased by 100 million years. 100 million years in an instant. One must know that in the immortal world, immortal emperors only had a lifespan of 500 billion years. Even the strongest immortal supremes only had a lifespan of one era. One era was 1,000,000,000,000 years. 100 million years was reduced in an instant. In other words, in 10,000 instants, the immortal supreme's lifespan would be exhausted. Moreover, which immortal venerable had enough lifespan to last an epoch? Therefore, even though the scenery in the realm of immortals was beautiful and there were almost no ferocious beasts or various dangers, it was the most dreaded place in the realm of immortals. At this moment, Morongyu was standing outside the fairyland. Floating in the void, looking from afar, the immortal realm in the distance was indeed very beautiful, just like what he saw on the sheepskin scroll. That's right, the map on the sheepskin scroll was the map of the immortal land. Is the heavenly punishment order really in the fairyland? Looking at the beautiful scenery of the fairyland, Morongyu frowned. The immortal realm is too dangerous. Even if it's just an ordinary place, the flow of time is 100 times faster than outside. Although his lifespan had already reached 100 billion years, which was the lifespan of a Xian immortal of the 9 heavens, he still couldn't do anything about it. However, if he accidentally stepped into a place where time flowed at a terrifying speed in the immortal realm, his 100 billion years of lifespan would be exhausted before long. For me, the immortal realm is also a very dangerous place. Morongyu frowned and muttered in his heart. Now, he wasn't here alone. Zhao, Jiqing, and the others were in the Hichu Luo Shu. Moronyu could break in by himself, but he didn't know if Zhao Jiqing and the others in the Hichu Luoshu would also be in danger. Hichu, in this situation, will the people in the Hichu Luoshu world be affected? Moreover, if they fall into the problem of the terrifying flow of time, will the Hichu Luoshu be able to teleport? Moronyu directly asked Hichu. I haven't experienced this kind of thing, so I can't make a judgment, Hichu directly said. Moronyu was depressed and asked again, in this kind of dangerous place, will there be soul grass? Maybe it depends on luck, Hichu indifferently said. On the other hand, Moronyu could no longer remain calm. Yu Mengxing urgently needed soul grass to repair her soul, and he urgently needed to improve his strength. However, these two most urgent things couldn't be completed in a short time. Perhaps, after obtaining the heavenly punishment order, there would be a turning point. Moronyu muttered in his heart. The immortal realm is really dangerous. Mengxing and the others can't take the risk with me. Only I can enter the immortal realm. Moronyu instantly came to a decision. With a flash of his body, he disappeared from where he stood. When he reappeared, he had returned to his manor in the heavenly punishment palace. In Yu Mengxing's situation, whether in Feng City or Shenzhen, it wasn't the safest place. The safest place was in the manor of the heavenly punishment palace. In the manor, no one dared to make a move. You stay here for the time being. I'll be back soon. Without waiting for Zhao Jiqing and the others to refuse, Moronyu disappeared. After secretly telling Steward Ma about this matter, he once again returned to the immortal realm. Hichu, I'm going in. Moronyu transmitted his voice to Hichu, and then directly stepped into the immortal realm. Everything in front of him was in a trance. When Moronyu sensed the surroundings, he could clearly feel the rapid flow of time around him. It was like a gentle breeze constantly brushing past his body. His lifespan was also slipping away at a faster rate than outside. 100 times the flow of time. Staying here for a year will waste 99 years. Moronyu felt that the flow of time here was not terrible. It was completely within the range of his acceptance. However, he knew that this was only the flow of time in the outermost part of the immortal realm. As he gradually approached the depths of the immortal realm, the flow of time would become faster and faster. Once Moronyu unfortunately stepped into a space with a terrible flow of time, it would be a tragedy. If it was not necessary, Moronyu did not want to enter here and take the risk. However, who asked the heavenly punishment order to be in the immortal realm? Of course, this was just a guess. However, it was very likely that the heavenly punishment order was in the immortal realm, and it was in the deepest part of the immortal realm. I hope I didn't encounter any abnormal flow of time. Moronyu muttered in his heart and began to rush forward quickly. Although the immortal realm did not have any restrictions on the power of spiritual sense. However, Moronyu did not dare to increase his speed to the extreme. He only rushed forward at a normal speed. At the same time, his spiritual sense was spread out to the extreme. Once he discovered that the flow of time was abnormal, he would stop immediately. There are people in the immortal realm? Not long after entering the immortal realm, Moronyu was surprised to see a few people in front of him, like him, flying towards the depths of the immortal realm. Under normal circumstances, no immortal would be willing to enter the immortal realm, unless there were relics, magical weapons, or treasures in the immortal realm. These people were all 9 heavens mystic celestials with a lifespan of 100 billion years. When Moronyu discovered them, they discovered Moronyu as well. When they saw Moronyu as only an overarching heavenly supreme celestial, they sneered disdainfully. How dare a mere overarching heavenly supreme celestial with a lifespan of only 1 billion years enter the immortal realm? Is he seeking death? One of the 9 heavens mystic celestials said disdainfully. Another 9 heavens mystic celestial laughed and said, perhaps he's tired of living. However, after mocking Moronyu, these people flew into the distance and disappeared from Moronyu's sight. Moronyu snorted disdainfully. Whether it was in terms of strength or lifespan, he was far superior to these 9 heavens mystic celestials. However, Moronyu could not be bothered to make a fuss about it. Naturally, this was also because these people did not come looking for trouble. Otherwise, Muronyu would have fought them. As Muronyu ventured deeper into the immortal realm, he encountered more and more people. He realized that the people who entered the danger zone weren't like him, who was alone. They were all from different factions. Among the hundreds of people that Muronyu encountered, there were a few disciples from different sections. Don't tell me there's a treasure in the immortal realm. Am I that lucky? Muronyu chuckled inwardly. He realized that his luck was simply too good. It seemed that wherever he went, treasures would appear. However, this was only Muronyu's way of entertaining himself. This was because he discovered that there were celestial monarchs among the people who had entered the danger zone. There were also many celestial kings among them. Even if a treasure appeared in the immortal realm, it would not be his turn to obtain it. The immortal realm was neither too big nor too small. However, it covered an area of 10 billion miles. As Muronyu continued to venture deeper, the flow of time gradually accelerated. At this moment, the flow of time had reached 1,000 times faster. At this moment, a shrill scream was heard in front of Muronyu. Muronyu's expression changed slightly. He immediately sped up and dashed forward. After crossing a large mountain, Muronyu saw a group of people in a kernel. Obviously, these people wanted to pass through the kernel. However, at this moment, they did not know what was going on and were rapidly retreating. What a terrifying flow of time. Muronyu could not help but exclaim. When Muronyu had just arrived, the people in the call were all middle-aged. However, their appearances had changed tremendously at this moment. In the beginning, they were like mortals in their 30s. In an instant, they seemed to have stepped into their 40s, and in another instant, they had already become people in their 50s. After a few moments, Muronyu was shocked to see that they had all become old men in their 80s or 90s. His hair was white, and his face was wrinkled like a dried orange peel. At this moment, they had not even rushed out of the call. Seeing this, Muronyu's heart turned cold. Chapter 576. Plop, plop. In a short period of time, they turned from middle-aged men to old men. Furthermore, Muronyu knew that these people definitely didn't look like the middle-aged man he'd seen before. This kind of rapid change was impossible in the immortal world or even the cultivation world. If they were ordinary people, this would happen. After all, ordinary people didn't have much strength. However, these people were 9 heavens Xian immortals with a lifespan of 100 billion years. Even if their lifespan was exhausted, their appearances wouldn't change. The only reason for this was that their lifespan and life force were rapidly depleting in a short period of time. Because their lifespan and life force were depleted too quickly in a unit of time, their appearance would change. At this moment, the 9 heavens Xian immortals were so old that they couldn't fly and fell directly to the ground. They were trembling and looked like they had 1 foot in the grave. In the end, Muronyu saw that they all fell to the ground and couldn't walk anymore. In fact, Muronyu could even feel their sacred life auras rapidly fading away. They're all dead. Muronyu looked indifferently at the call, but his heart was cold. At this moment, the 9 heavens Xian immortals were already dead. However, even though they were dead, the flow of time in the call was still fast. Therefore, Muronyu saw that the clothes of the 9 heavens Xian immortals were rapidly decaying and gradually turning into ashes. After a while, a gust of wind blew in from the other side of the kernel. Muronyu saw that the 9 heavens Xian immortals had turned into ashes and drifted to the ground with the wind. Muronyu wasn't shocked that their clothes had turned into ashes because of the power of time. However, the physical body of a 9 heavens Xian immortal was very strong. If there were no accidents, after a 9 heavens Xian immortal died, their flesh would disappear, but their bones would remain for a long time. However, in a few breaths' time after they died, their flesh and bones had completely turned into ashes. They were blown away by the wind. This was the power of time. The effect of time only accelerated the time it took for these bones and flesh to turn into dust. What a terrifying flow of time! Fear flashed across Muronyu's face. but his heart was thumping nervously. The valley ahead was about 10,000 miles long. A distance of 10,000 miles was nothing to ordinary heaven immortals, let alone 9 heavens Xian immortals. In front of a 9 heavens Xian immortal, a distance of 10,000 miles could be crossed in an instant. However, these 9 heavens Xian immortals did not have the time to cross this distance and were killed by the power of time. What did this mean? It wasn't because there was a terrifying force in the valley that killed them, or because they were too weak. It was because the flow of time in the valley was too fast. The flow of time was so swift that even these experts at the 9 heavens mysterious immortal realm were unable to escape this place. If I had entered this place by mistake, I would have ended up like them. Although the scenery in the immortal land is beautiful and intoxicating, it always kills people invisibly. Muronyu muttered in his heart and became more cautious. I must be more careful in the future. Even if it's slow, it can't be too fast. Once I enter this place, I can only wait for death. Muronyu warned himself in his heart. What a terrifying flow of time. When Muronyu came over, some people also heard the news and came over. At this moment, dozens of people had gathered not far from Muronyu, and all of them were 9 heaven Xian immortals. Among them, a large number of experts had seen the scene just now. Each and every one of them was shocked to the core. After glancing at these people, Muronyu turned around and wanted to go around the valley and continue forward. However, he wanted to leave, but someone didn't want him to leave. Boy, stop. A 9 heavens Xian immortal flew over and stopped Muronyu. Muronyu frowned slightly and asked, "What's the matter?" The person who stopped Muronyu was a young 9 heavens Xian immortal. At this moment, he was looking at Muronyu with a hideous smile and said, "Boy, I need your help with something." "I'm sorry, I'm not free." Muronyu frowned slightly. These people didn't know him, so why would they help him? Moreover, they didn't need his help because there were dozens of his companions nearby. "Not free? I have to help even if I'm not free." The 9 heavens Xian immortal grinned and continued, "Go to the valley and see what's going on inside." A cold light flashed in Muronyu's eyes. This young 9 heavens Xian immortal was obviously the first batch of people to come here. He was one of the experts who had witnessed the 9 heavens Xian immortals being killed by the power of time. At this moment, he actually wanted Muronyu to go into the valley. He wanted Muronyu to die. One could see how vicious he was. Muronyu suppressed his murderous intent and said to the young 9 heavens Xian immortal indifferently, "The time flow in the valley is terrifying. I'll die if I go in. Why don't you go in yourself?" The young 9 heavens Xian immortal sneered and said, "I know the time flow in the valley is terrifying, but I don't know how terrifying it is. So, you go in and let me see it clearly." A cold glint flickered in Muronyu's eyes as traces of killing intent gushed out. He was truly furious. This young 9 heavens Xian immortal wanted to sacrifice Muronyu's life just because he wanted to explore the valley. It could even be said that they only wanted Muronyu to go in and see what was going on. In fact, he already knew how terrifying the valley was. There was no need for Muronyu to go in. However, the young 9 heavens Xian immortal still came to Muronyu for some reason. "What? You don't want to?" The young 9 heavens Xian immortal released a powerful aura that pressed down on Muronyu. He continued to say with a sinister smile, "Boy, you better know what's good for you and go in. Otherwise, I'll toss you in." In the young man's opinion, Muronyu, who was only an overarching heavenly supreme celestial, was just an insignificant ant who was not worth mentioning. If he wanted to, he could kill as many people as he wanted. At this moment, the young man's companions, or rather, those from the same faction, looked over. However, they did not say anything when they saw the young man's actions. After all, they wanted to know how terrifying the valley was, especially those who had come later. "Toss me in." Muronyu suddenly laughed. "That's a good idea." The young man sneered. "Boy, you're refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. In that case, I'll grant you your wish." As he spoke, he reached out his hand to grab Muronyu. intending to toss Murongyu into the valley. However, the young Nine Heavens Xian Immortal was shocked to discover that Murongyu had already disappeared from his line of sight when he extended his hand to grab Murongyu. The young Nine Heavens Xian Immortal was shocked. At this moment, he felt as though his neck was being gripped by a pair of pliers. A surge of power surged into his body from the iron pincer-like hand, instantly imprisoning his strength. The young Nine Heavens Xian Immortal was shocked. When he regained his senses, he discovered he was already in the air. The person who had caught and sealed his strength was none other than Murongyu. With Murongyu's current strength, he could easily deal with an ordinary Nine Heavens Xian Immortal. After all, his dragon energy was 1,000 to 2,000 times stronger than an ordinary Nine Heavens Xian Immortal. Murongyu's strength was definitely above that of the young Nine Heavens Xian Immortal. Bang! No! Senior brother, save me. In midair, the young man saw himself flying quickly toward the colonel. He was scared half to death and hurriedly yelled. However, before the other Nine Heavens Xian Immortals could react, he had already fallen into the valley. Because his strength had been sealed by Murongyu, the young man could not fly at all. However, the terror of the call and the fear of death made him get up immediately and rush out of the colonel. However, even those Nine Heavens Xian Immortals who were not sealed could not escape, let alone him. As a result, the young man aged rapidly. His lifespan and life force were fading rapidly. He was about to follow in the footsteps of those Nine Heavens Xian Immortals. At this moment, one of the experts in his sect finally realized what was going on. He reached out his hand to grab the young man in the valley, intending to pull him out. However, as soon as the young man's hand entered the valley, he retracted his hand as if he had been electrocuted. It was also a young Nine Heavens Xian Immortal who had made a move. At this moment, his originally plump hands had withered rapidly. They were full of wrinkles like the skin of a dried orange. Murongyu even saw the withered hand of the Nine Heavens Xian Immortal spreading upward at an extremely terrifying speed. The Nine Heavens Xian Immortal let out a miserable cry. He waved his other hand and directly cut off the withered hand. Originally, it was only his hand that had withered. When he realized that he had cut off the withered hand, it had already spread to his shoulder. If the young man had been a moment slower, his entire body would have withered. The power of time, even if it was only a part of his body that came into contact with the terrifying power of time, his entire body would be affected and even killed by the power of time. The surrounding experts all felt chills run down their spines when they saw this. They could not help but retreat a great distance away from the colonel. At this moment, the young Nine Heavens Xian Immortal who had been thrown into the valley by Murongyu had turned into a cloud of dust and scattered with the wind. He could not be more dead. Chapter 577. Gasp. Everyone could not help but gasp when they saw this. They had arrived late, so they did not know what had happened. However, they saw with their own eyes that the young Nine Heavens Xian Celestial was killed by the power of time in just a few breaths. They were all Nine Heavens Xian Celestials with similar lifespans. If they were in Lu Zhou's shoes, they would have suffered the same fate. The Nine Heavens Xian Celestial who had attacked Lu Zhou earlier had a horrified expression on his face. At this moment, his severed arm had been reduced to dust. If he had hesitated for even a split second, his entire body would have been reduced to dust just like the severed arm. Although everyone was shocked, they did not forget that Murongyu had thrown the young Nine Heavens Xian Celestial into the valley. At this moment, all of them turned to look at Murongyu with killing intent burning in their eyes. However, they did not make a move. Although Murongyu was only a late-stage, overarching Heavenly Supreme Celestial, how could an overarching Heavenly Supreme Celestial subdue a Nine Heavens Xian Celestial in just a blink of an eye? Although the young Nine Heavens Xian Celestial was not considered an elite, he was still a Nine Heavens Xian Celestial. His strength was many times stronger than an overarching Heavenly Supreme Celestial. However, Moron, you had subdued the young nine heavens Xian celestial in just a blink of an eye and threw him into the valley. They could not help but hesitate. They even suspected that Murongyu was a powerhouse who had concealed his cultivation base. None of them dared to make a move against someone who was so strong that they did not know his exact strength. Murongyu looked at the dozens of people disdainfully and scoffed. "What other questions do you have?" Everyone was silent and did not say anything. Before Murongyu had revealed his strength, these people had treated him like an ant. They did not even bother to look at him. Now, it seemed like their roles had been reversed. Murongyu could not help but ask, "I killed one of your men. Don't you have any complaints?" However, the dozens of people remained silent. Scram! A trace of impatience flashed across Murongyu's face as he suddenly barked in a low voice. "Let's go." The nine heavens, Xian Immortal, who was thrown into the valley by Murongyu, shouted with a gloomy face. Then he left with the others. "Senior brother, are we going to let him go just like that?" A nine-heaven Xian Immortal asked unwillingly. "So what if I don't let him go? Could it be that you have the ability to kill him? You should know that this is the immortal world. Once a battle breaks out, it's very likely that we'll all die." The nine heavens Xian Immortal, who was addressed as senior brother, said in a deep voice, "If Murongyu was an immortal king realm expert, or someone even more powerful and was hiding his strength, he could definitely throw all of them into the valley. In that case, they would definitely die. Moreover, they guessed that there was an extremely high chance that Murongyu was a celestial king or someone even stronger." Seeing them leave, Murongyu coldly snorted and turned to walk in another direction. In fact, although Murongyu was powerful, if the dozens of people swarmed him, Murongyu probably wouldn't fight with them. After all, it was too dangerous here. If they were accidentally thrown into the valley, it would be a tragedy. Moreover, if they were chased, this was the immortal realm. In the immortal realm, there were countless places like the valley. If they accidentally entered it, they would really be courting death. Because of that, Murongyu had already unleashed his most powerful attack from the very beginning. Therefore, he was able to suppress the nine heavens, Xian Immortal, and intimidate the others. In the following time, Murongyu became even more cautious. In addition to being careful of the environment of the immortal realm, he also tried his best to avoid contact with those forces. After all, those people were all forces. If there was a conflict, it wouldn't be good for either side. The more careful he was, the slower he would be. After a full month, Murongyu still hadn't reached the deepest part of the immortal realm. One had to know that the immortal realm was only 10 billion miles in size. This was only the total area of the immortal realm. Murongyu had reached the deepest part of the immortal realm, and it was at most a few billion miles. If it was outside, a few billion miles was nothing to Murongyu. However, he could only be very careful here. Even so, Murongyu had accidentally entered a few frightening places, causing him to lose quite a bit of his lifespan. 100 million years of lifespan. Although it's only 1,000th of my lifespan, it's not even half of the journey. Who knows if I'll encounter such places later? Moreover, the deeper I go, the faster the flow of time. Murongyu muttered to himself as he moved forward. He had wasted 100 million years of his lifespan. This was because Murongyu had no choice but to enter a few terrifying places. If he wasn't so vigilant, it wouldn't be as simple as losing 100 million years of lifespan. Hundreds of millions of years, even billions of years, was possible. Moreover, as he went deeper into the dangerous place, the range of Murongyu's divine thought shrank more and more. This didn't mean that divine thought was suppressed in the immortal realm. Divine thought wasn't suppressed in the immortal realm. This was because the consumption of divine thought was extremely terrifying as the flow of time sped up. It was the same principle as the broken arm of the nine heavens Xian Immortal who had saved him. Otherwise, the immortal realm was only so big, and no one knew what was in the deepest part. If it wasn't so, the divine thought of those experts would have finished exploring the immortal realm. Of course, during this process, Murongyu couldn't avoid running into people from those forces. However, there was no conflict between the two parties. Muronyu even saw some people who entered a place where the flow of time was extremely terrifying and died of old age. What are these people looking for? It seems like their goal is the deepest part of the immortal realm. No, I must reach the deepest part of the immortal realm before they do. Otherwise, things might change. Murongyu's expression changed slightly, and he immediately sped up. At this moment, the flow of time in the immortal realm had reached 10,000 times. Moreover, it would continue to accelerate. However, what puzzled Muronyu was how the things in the surroundings survived when the flow of time was so fast. Forget about the trees and flowers, they would grow again after they died. But what about the huge rocks? The peaks? The rivers? They were the same as the ones outside. If a huge mountain from the outside was moved in, it wouldn't take long for it to be eroded and weathered by the power of time. In the immortal realm, there were mysteries everywhere. There were unsolved mysteries everywhere. These weren't things that Muronyu could figure out. After all, how could he discover the truth of the mysteries of heaven and earth? The flow of time continued to accelerate. 10,000 times, 15,000 times, 20,000 times. When time accelerated to 50,000 times, Muronyu was already close to the center of the immortal realm. At this moment, Muronyu finally couldn't avoid coming into contact with those forces. Among these forces, there were at least thousands of experts of the nine heaven Xian immortal realm or above who had entered the immortal realm. In fact, Muronyu estimated that there were more than 10,000 of these people. Because they had reached the deepest part of the immortal realm, many of these people had died. However, there were also many people who had entered the deepest part before Muronyu. When Muronyu arrived, he found that these people were all gathered at the highest peak of the immortal realm. This time, Muronyu was depressed, because the sheepskin scroll in his hand pointed to the highest peak. "Kid, get out of here quickly or die." Just as Muronyu approached, a cold voice sounded in his ears. At the same time, an immortal king realm expert appeared in front of him. He looked at Muronyu coldly with a murderous look. It seemed that if Muronyu didn't leave, he would kill Muronyu. Muronyu's face immediately darkened, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. "Who are you? Do you think the immortal realm is your back mountain?" "Kid, you're right. During the time we're here, the immortal realm is our back mountain. Now, get out of here immediately or die." The immortal king looked at Muronyu with disdain. In order to show his disdain for Muronyu, he didn't even mention the power behind him. However, to be able to mobilize so many nine heavens Xian immortal realm experts, these forces were probably not small forces. It was very likely that they were those super first-rate forces. After all, although the first-rate forces in the immortal realm were powerful, their strength was only at the immortal monarch realm. Such a force shouldn't have so many nine heavens Xian immortals. After all, it was impossible for them to come out in full force. What if I say that I don't want to leave? Muronyu stood on the spot and looked at the immortal king indifferently. "Then you'll have to die," the immortal king said with a sneer. Before he could finish speaking, he threw a punch at Muronyu. Muronyu executed the soldier formula and retreated explosively, dodging the immortal king's attack. I thought you were lucky to be able to enter this place. I didn't expect you to have some skills as well. However, your luck ran out the moment you met me," the immortal king said as he took a step forward and threw a punch at Muronyu. "Is that so?" A strange smile appeared on Muronyu's face. At the same time, he threw a punch at the immortal king as well. "You're courting death." The immortal king was furious when he saw Muronyu, a mere overarching heavenly supreme celestial, attacking him instead of running away. That was because he felt humiliated. He could feel the disdain in Muronyu's smile. "Die!" the immortal king said in a low voice as he threw a punch at Muronyu's fist. He no longer wanted to kill Muronyu with a punch. He wanted this arrogant fellow to suffer a fate worse than death. Bang! As soon as the immortal king's fist collided with Muronyu's fist, a dazzling flame erupted from Muronyu's fist. A strong aura of death instantly rose in the immortal king's heart. Chapter 578. A dazzling ball of fire suddenly erupted from Murong Yu's fist. At this moment, the immortal king, who felt the strong aura of death, instantly reacted and immediately retreated. However, just as the strong aura of death rose in his heart, the ball of fire in Murong Yu's hand had already quickly erupted and covered the immortal king with lightning speed. The immortal king was shocked. He instantly increased his speed to the limit and retreated explosively. However, it was already too late. With a puff, the ball of fire that suddenly erupted from Murong Yu's fist had already enveloped the immortal king. Then, this ball of fire carried a terrifying power and burned toward the immortal king. The immortal king roared. With his body as the center, a raging wave of power spread out in all directions, wanting to push away the flames that were pouncing toward him. However, what shocked the immortal king was that when his power rushed toward the flames and was about to send them flying, he was shocked to see that his powerful power had directly disappeared. No, it didn't disappear. Instead, it was directly burned by the flames. As soon as it came into contact with the flames, it was completely burned. However, the flames didn't stop at all and continued to quickly drown him. In the end, the immortal king was still unable to resist these terrifying flames. After letting out a shrill scream, his entire body disappeared into thin air. He was burned to the point that not even a trace of him was left. Yin-yang fire. Yes, these terrifying powers were yin-yang fire. With Murong Yu's strength, after using the battle formula to raise his strength to the extreme, he had the terrifying strength to fight against an immortal king. However, he only had the strength to fight against an immortal king. It was extremely difficult to kill an immortal king. Therefore, at the beginning of the attack, Murong Yu had already taken out the yin-yang cauldron and covered his fist. The immortal king's fist landed on Murong Yu's fist. In fact, he had only landed on the yin-yang cauldron. Murong Yu took the opportunity to erupt with yin-yang fire and burned the immortal king to death in one fell swoop. Among them, the reason why Murong Yu was able to kill this immortal king so easily was mainly because he had caught him off guard. Otherwise, it would be difficult to burn him to death in an open battle. After all, this celestial king wasn't a fool. After discovering how terrifying the yin-yang flame was, he continued to resist it. Of course, being able to kill people was a sign of strength, even if it was a sneak attack or a surprise attack. In this world, only those who survived in the end were the true winners. Rumble. Just as Murong Yu killed this immortal king, some of the nearby experts instantly reacted. Therefore, one by one, the experts either stretched out their large hands to slap down on Murong Yu or blasted out waves of terrifying power to kill Murong Yu. In a short period of time, more than a dozen Immortal King Realm experts made their moves. Murong Yu's complexion changed slightly. Without much consideration, his figure flashed, and he immediately retreated. It was unwise to fight these people head-on. Moreover, Murong Yu was no match for them. Therefore, he could only choose to retreat temporarily. Of course, his retreat path was the path before he came. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to retreat so quickly. If he accidentally entered those places where the flow of time was extremely terrifying, then he would really be courting death. Murong Yu quickly retreated, but those experts didn't stop. Immediately, many experts chased after him. However, they were different from Murong Yu's unbridled retreat. They had a lot of misgivings, so their speed wasn't that fast. Half a day later, Murong Yu finally escaped the pursuit of those experts along the path he came from. Then, he entered the Hichu Luoshu and continued to fly towards the deepest part of the immortal realm. No matter what, he had to reach the highest peak in the deepest part of the immortal realm, because it was very likely that the heavenly punishment decree was there. However, Murong Yu had killed that immortal king, which had already caused the force that the immortal king belonged to bear a grudge. Murong Yu didn't even doubt that as long as he appeared, those people would definitely attack him. Even if he left the immortal realm in the future, they wouldn't let him go. However, Morongyu naturally wasn't afraid of them. After all, they had attacked first and wanted to kill him. Logically speaking, they were on Morongyu's side. Moreover, if Morongyu killed the other party, would he still talk to them about these things? If I wasn't strong enough, I would have been killed. If you were killed by me, then you are courting death. If you have the ability, then come and take revenge. In the Hichu Luoshu world, Morongyu carefully returned to the highest peak in the immortal realm. At this time, there were more than 10,000 experts gathered in front of the highest peak. The weakest of them was at the Nine Heavens Xian immortal realm. More than 10 forces. Among these forces, there were strong and weak forces. There were 1,000 or 2,000 people from the powerful forces, and there were dozens of people from the weak forces. These forces should be the major forces of the Qinghe Prefecture. Morongyu looked at the forces outside from the Hichu Luoshu and fell into deep thought. The Qinghe Prefecture was one of the millions of prefectures in the immortal realm. The immortal realm was within the Qinghe Prefecture. Unlike the Feng Prefecture, which was a remote prefecture, although the Qinghe Prefecture wasn't one of the top 10 prefectures in the immortal realm, it was huge and prosperous. Among them, there were a few super first-rate forces. A super first-rate force was a force that had an immortal Emperor Realm expert overseeing it. Compared to the Feng Prefecture, which only had immortal kings, the difference between the two was huge. Clear Stream Sect, White Profound Sect, Power Sect. These three forces were the strongest forces in the Clear Stream Sect. They all had immortal Emperor Realm experts and were considered super first-rate forces. They were very powerful. Other than these three super first-rate forces, there were more than 10 other first-rate forces in the Qinghe Prefecture. Of course, these were only forces. There were many experts in the Qinghe Prefecture. For example, outside the Clear Stream Sect, there wasn't just one immortal emperor. There were many immortal lords and immortal kings. Other than these experts from the major forces, there were also experts from other forces or rogue cultivators. In short, the Qinghe Prefecture was a major prefecture in the immortal realm. It was far from what a remote prefecture like the Feng Prefecture could compare to. The immortal king that Morongyu had killed was an expert from the White Profound Sect. At this moment, the leaders of more than 10 forces were gathered together and seemed to be discussing something. Although Morongyu wanted to get closer and eavesdrop, there were immortal lords there. Morongyu was worried that he would be discovered. Once he was discovered, the other party would immediately confine the void or shatter the void so that he couldn't teleport. They might even throw him into the spatial turbulence or force him to a place where the flow of time was terrifying. Therefore, Morongyu didn't get closer. Since he couldn't find out, Morongyu started to think about other experts. However, these people were very powerful. They were at least 9 Heavens Xian immortals. It was easy for Morongyu to kill them, but it was difficult for him to take them down. Perhaps it was because they had already finished their discussion. The dozen or so high immortal experts stood together. Then, as if they had given an order, the people and their forces began to walk slowly towards the peak. Seeing this, Morongyu's brows furrowed. What are these people looking for? Could it be because of the heavenly punishment token? Morongyu suddenly had a bad premonition. Could it be that the parchment wasn't the only one and they had found it? If that was the case, he might not be able to get the heavenly punishment token. Even if he got it, he might not be able to own it. After all, with the heavenly punishment token, he could control the heavenly punishment palace. And the heavenly punishment token could represent the punishment of the heavenly punishment. If the news of the heavenly punishment token spread, there would be a bloody storm in the immortal realm. Blood would flow like rivers. At that time, there would be countless experts participating in the fight for the heavenly punishment token. At that time, the entire immortal realm would be in chaos. There would be countless deaths and injuries. Even the people from the heaven realm would intervene. After all, that was the heavenly punishment token. Even the gods coveted it. No, I must find the heavenly punishment token before they do. The news of the heavenly punishment token must not spread. Murong Yu's eyes flashed coldly. Immediately, he controlled the Hichu Luo Shu and followed behind those people. They flew towards the peak. However, the peak was still full of danger. Murong Yu did not dare to fly too fast. Moreover, there were so many people now. He did not dare to show his face. No, I must go up before they do, and I must search for it. After half a day, Murong Yu became more and more anxious. The parchment had pointed to this peak. However, there was no more specific location. Murong Yu realized that this peak was at least 1,000,000 miles away. Here, everyone's divine consciousness could only cover a very small area. This was because the flow of time here had reached a terrifying 100,000 times. In other words, a lifespan of 100,000 years in the outside world could only live for 1 year here. However, this amount of lifespan was nothing to people like them who had tens of billions of years of lifespan. However, who knew if there was a place where the flow of time was even more terrifying here? Once their divine consciousness spread out, it would be a tragedy. Even their lifespan would be taken away. With just over 10,000 people, it was impossible to search 1,000,000 miles away. Therefore, Murong Yu controlled the Hichu Luo Shu and carefully distanced himself from the crowd. Then, he came out of the Hichu Luo Shu and began to search the peak. However, Murong Yu was a little depressed. The places he could search alone were extremely limited. If the heavenly punishment token was really here, the chances of him discovering it were extremely small. The chances of other forces discovering it were much higher. Forget it. If they find it, I'll just kill them all. Murong Yu's eyes flashed coldly. His face was ruthless. Chapter 579. According to the legends, there was a black lotus in this world. The black lotus had 9 seeds, and every ripe lotus seed could allow a life to be reborn. The black lotus seed could allow a dead person to be reborn once. In other words, it could allow a person to have 2 lives. Such a heaven-defying black lotus seed that could allow a person to be reborn after death. Did it really exist in this world? Of course, this was only a legend. How could there be a black lotus in this world? Even if there was a black lotus seed, it couldn't possibly have such a heaven-defying ability. After all, a person was dead. Could they really be reborn? When Murong Yu finally caught a lone 9-heaven Xian immortal and brought him to Hichu Luo Shu, he also found out from the 9-heaven Xian immortal's memories why the White Profound sect wanted to enter the immortal realm. It wasn't because of the heavenly punishment order, but because of the black lotus seed. Speaking of this 9-heaven Xian immortal, his strength wasn't that great. However, Murong Yu still used a Herculean effort to capture him with the Pink Death and other methods. This 9-heaven Xian immortal was a disciple of a big shot in the Clearstream sect. He accidentally heard about the black lotus seed. As for the others, they only knew that their mission in the immortal realm was to find a black lotus with 9 seeds. However, what was the use of this black lotus? No one knew. If Murong Yu caught someone else, he probably wouldn't know that the black lotus seed had such a terrifying effect. However, how did the Clearstream sect know or confirm that there was a black lotus in the immortal realm? The 9-heaven Xian immortal caught by Murong Yu didn't have any relevant memories. However, this wasn't what Murong Yu was concerned about, because it was obvious that the Clearstream sect only knew that the black lotus grew on the highest peak, but no one knew where it was. Hichu, do you think there really is such a magical thing in this world? Murong Yu turned to Hichu and asked, "What do you think?" Hichu didn't speak. He only looked at Murong Yu and asked. Murong Yu frowned slightly. "I don't think such a heaven-defying thing exists in this world. The Phoenix's nirvana is already very heaven-defying, and there's also something that can give people an extra life." Hichu smiled and said indifferently, "Since the Phoenix can be reborn through nirvana, why is there no such thing in the world that can give people a second life?" Murong Yu was shocked. He looked at Hichu and asked in surprise, "Do you really have it?" Hichu nodded. "This world is very mysterious. There are only things you can't think of. There's nothing that isn't there. Of course, some things are very common. Some things are extremely rare. and some things have never been discovered. To live in this world, you have to be sure that there's nothing you don't have. Everything was possible. It's just that everything is waiting for you to discover it. Moronyu was shocked. Such a thing actually existed? However, thinking about the soul grass, Moronyu gradually calmed down. This black lotus seed had almost the same effect as the soul grass. It's just that the black lotus seed was even more heaven-defying than the soul grass. There are black lotus seeds in the immortal land, and there are 9 of them. If we can get these black lotus seeds, we'll have an extra life. Moronyu's eyes flashed as various thoughts flashed through his mind. If there were really such black lotus seeds, if Moronyu got these black lotus seeds, Moronyu wouldn't need to find a soul grass. Even if Mengxing died because of the problem with her soul, Moronyu could also use the black lotus seeds to revive her without any pressure. Seeing Moronyu's excited expression, Hichu couldn't help but say, "You don't have to be happy too early. It might exist, but might not exist on the peak." After being splashed with cold water by Hichu, Moronyu gradually calmed down. Then, his eyes flashed with determination. No matter what, I have to find a black lotus seed. Of course, the prerequisite is that there must be a black lotus seed on the peak. As for the Clearstream sect, they can kill any immortal that stands in their way. Moronyu left Hichu Luoshu with a murderous aura and continued walking towards the peak. At the same time, he asked Hichu to pay attention to any movements on the peak. To Moronyu, who couldn't spread too much divine thought or other people, the peak with a radius of only 1,000,000 miles was too big. Especially to them, who still needed to find something, the peak was even bigger. After all, it was difficult for them to search the entire peak with just a few of them. There's strength in numbers. When Shenzhen, the Heaven God Palace, and the Heavenly Court become stronger, I can bring a large number of experts to the peak. However, it's not possible now. The flow of time here is too terrifying. Half a month later, Moronyu was already halfway up the peak. However, the area he could search was too limited. Fortunately, he caught the unlucky 9 Heavens Xian Immortal. This fella had a jade slip that could be used to send messages. This was the jade slip that the Clearstream sect and the other forces used to send messages. Through this jade slip, Moronyu learned about the various situations of the Clearstream sect and the others. In the past half a month, hundreds of experts had fallen into the place where the flow of time was terrifying and were killed by the power of time. In addition, hundreds of people had wasted a large amount of their lifespan because of the flow of time. Their combat power had been reduced. Moreover, apart from that, no one had obtained anything, not even a single medicinal herb. This made Moronyu feel relieved. However, he also felt gloomy. He hadn't gained anything on the way here. However, when he thought about how the flow of time here was as high as 100,000 times, or even higher, Moronyu could not help but feel relieved. With such a fast flow of time, everything would have withered long ago. How could there be anything valuable? At the thought of this, Moronyu had a bad feeling. These ordinary flowers and trees were withering at an extremely fast speed. Could it be the same for the Black Lotus? If that was the case, then the Clearstream sect and the others had come for nothing. As for Moronyu, although it was a pity, his goal was not the Black Lotus seed. Of course, this was only a guess. Moronyu still had doubts about whether there was a Black Lotus here. Time continued to pass. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. In the 10 years in the immortal world, Moronyu had lost close to 2 million years of lifespan. This was because the flow of time at the peak was not fixed at 100,000 times. The flow of time would constantly increase with the height of the peak. During this time, Moronyu had mistakenly entered some dangerous places and wasted a large amount of his lifespan. However, 2 million years of lifespan was just a drop in the ocean for Moronyu, who had 100 billion years of lifespan. He did not need to care about it at all. At this moment, Moronyu knew that the Clearstream sect and the others had suffered heavy losses from the 9 Heavens Xian Immortals communication jade slip. Almost half of them had been wiped out by the power of time. Hichu, is there anyone in this world who can control the power of time? In the past 10 years, Murong, you had constantly witnessed the terror of the power of time. If someone could control such a heaven-defying law, then their strength would be absolutely terrifying. They could simply kill people without leaving a trace. Time is one of the most powerful laws of heaven and earth. It's a time law. Strictly speaking, no one can control the real-time law. However, there are life forms in heaven and earth that can borrow the time law. Murong, you was shocked. How strong are these people? Don't worry. These people can only borrow a little bit of the time law. It's not very powerful. Hearing this, Murong, you was relieved. Otherwise, if they encountered such a terrifying existence who could control the time law, there was no need to fight. They could just run as far as possible. Time acceleration is also a kind of time law. There are many treasures in the immortal world or heaven realm that can accelerate time. The people who created these treasures must be proficient in the time law. Hichu continued. Although time can be accelerated, it requires a lot of power. For immortals or gods, if they don't have an extremely terrifying flow of time, it's useless. Murong, you continued. If a person with the flow of time wanted to use the power of time to kill an enemy, then they must make time flow at an extremely terrifying speed. After all, whether it was immortals or gods, their lifespans were extremely long. The more terrifying the flow of time was, the more power was needed. Even if they burned their lifespan, they probably wouldn't be able to accelerate time to an extremely terrifying speed. After 10 years, Murong Yu finally reached the peak of the mountain. Along the way, Murong Yu and the Clear Stream Sex immortals didn't gain anything. Especially Murong Yu. He didn't find any news about the heavenly punishment order. This is a fragrance? When Murong Yu reached the peak of the mountain, a faint fragrance directly entered Murong Yu's nose. The fragrance of lotus flowers. When Murong Yu smelled this fragrance, he immediately determined that it was the fragrance of lotus flowers. This was because there was a time when Murong Yu's body always emitted this faint fragrance. Could there really be a black lotus here? Murong Yu's heart trembled. Then he slowly walked in the direction of the fragrance. However, Murong Yu wasn't overwhelmed by this sudden discovery. If there were treasures, the danger would be even more terrifying. Moreover, this was the highest peak of the immortal realm. Murong Yu had already taken out the Hichu Luo Shu and covered his body. He slowly walked over with the Yin-Yang cauldron in his left hand and the phoenix spear in his right. The fragrance became stronger. After walking for a distance, Murong Yu suddenly opened up in front of him. Then a huge lake appeared in front of him. Chapter 580. The lake was about 100,000 miles in circumference. The water was clear, and the waves were rippling. The scenery was beautiful. The faint fragrance was coming from the lake. At a glance, the water in the lake was clear without any turbidity. One could see the bottom of the lake at a glance. There were no plants on the lake, except for the unique black lotus in the middle of the lake. Black lotus! The black lotus, except for its black color, was nothing special. It was the same size as an ordinary lotus. If not for Murong Yu's sharp eyes, it would not have been easy to find the black lotus in the huge lake. The black lotus floated quietly above the lake, with only 3 leaves showing. In the center of the leaf, a black leaf stem rose into the sky, and on top of it was a black lotus pod the size of a palm. Black lotus, lotus pod, lotus seed. In fact, Murong Yu could even sense that the faint fragrance was coming from the lotus seed pod. There really is a black lotus, but I wonder if there are lotus seeds? Do those lotus seeds have the heaven-defying effect of resurrection? Looking at the black lotus in the lake, Murong Yu became excited. Young master, did you notice that this black lotus is very similar to the 9 black lotuses that grew in your dantian? At that moment, Hichu's voice sounded in Murong Yu's ears. Murong Yu immediately looked at the black lotus. The more he looked at it, the more he felt that it was similar to the black lotuses that appeared during his fusion stage. The reason why the black lotus in my dantian is different is because I'm a chaotic celestial body, right? It is similar to this black lotus just because we are both black lotuses, Muronyu said calmly, suppressing the surprise in his heart. The black lotus that appeared during the fusion stage disappeared after breaking through to the next realm. However, it did not really disappear. That was because the black lotus had turned into 9 fruits that looked like ginseng fruits and grew on the tree of life in Murongyu's dantian. As for the 9 ginseng fruits, Muronyu still did not know what they were used for. I wonder if this black lotus has lotus seeds? Muronyu looked at the black lotus, his eyes flashing. He was ready to enter the lake. At that moment, a voice sounded, and then several figures appeared not far behind Muronyu. When Muronyu discovered them, they also discovered Muronyu. Damn it! Muronyu cursed in his heart. He was too careless just now. He was so focused on the black lotus in the lake that he did not notice the people behind him. It's him. When these people saw Muronyu, their faces. They were only 9 heavens Xian immortal, Muronyu, and Muronyu. After witnessing Muronyu kill a celestial king and seeing Muronyu again, these 9 heavens Xian immortals felt great pressure. Even though Muronyu did not release a powerful aura, they still felt great pressure. Finally, one of the 9 heavens Xian immortals looked at the huge lake and exclaimed, "That's the black lotus!" Die. Muronyu furrowed his brows and growled. His figure blurred and turned into a black blur as he pounced towards the 9 heavens Xian immortals. He had to stop these people from spreading the news, and the only way to stop them was to kill them. Bang! One of the 9 heavens Xian immortals did not even have time to react before he was smashed into a cloud of blood mist by Murongyu's punch. Once Muronyu had the intention to kill, he would show no mercy. After killing the 9 heavens Xian immortal with one punch, he swayed his body and slapped the chest of the second 9 heavens Xian immortal. You! The 9 heavens Xian immortal was shocked and furious. He only had time to say one word before his body exploded. 2 people were killed in an instant. Finally, after Muronyu killed the 2 9 heavens Xian immortals, the rest of the people finally came to their senses. However, they did not attack Muronyu. Instead, they turned around and fled in all directions. All of you dot! Muronyu shouted and threw out the yin-yang cauldron. The yin-yang fire in the sky exploded. Even though the flow of time here was terrifying, it could not stop the yin-yang fire's destructive power. Wherever the flames passed, the void would be incinerated into nothingness. The 9 heavens Xian immortals didn't even have time to scream before they were burned to death by the terrifying yin-yang fire. Damn it! However, after killing all of them, Muronyu's face turned gloomy. This was because the jade slip in his hand informed him of the discovery of the lake and the black lotus. While Muronyu was killing the 9 heavens Xian immortals, someone had already spread the news of this place. At this moment, the Clear Stream sect and other forces that had entered the Wonderland must have received the news of the black lotus. People from the Clear Stream sect and other forces should be here soon. Let's see if I can get the black lotus before they arrive. Muronyu came to the lake with a gloomy face. After thinking for a while, he finally entered the lake. After entering the lake, Muronyu did not move forward immediately. Instead, he carefully sensed the flow of time here. The flow of time is the same as outside the lake. Only then did Muronyu's nervous heart relax. He unfurled his illusory light wings and slowly flew towards the black lotus. The closer I am to the black lotus, the faster the flow of time. Muronyu came to a stop after advancing a few miles. He discovered that the flow of time had already reached 200,000 times faster than normal. Outside the lake, the flow of time was also very terrifying. It was only a few 100,000 times faster. At this moment, Muronyu had only advanced a few miles, but the flow of time was tens of thousands of times faster. He was at least 40 to 50,000 miles away from the black lotus in the center of the lake. 10 miles, the flow of time is tens of thousands of times faster. 100 miles is hundreds of thousands of times faster. 10,000 miles is tens of millions of times faster. When I'm near the black lotus, the flow of time is probably hundreds of millions of times faster. Murong sighed helplessly. Hundreds of millions of times faster. In other words, if Murong stayed there for a year, his lifespan would be reduced by hundreds of millions of years. Although Murong had 100 billion years of lifespan, how many billions of years of lifespan were there? However, Murong could afford to waste his lifespan. After all, he was only an overarching heavenly supreme celestial. Once he broke through and became a great overarching golden celestial, his lifespan would increase tremendously. Let's do it! After muttering to himself for a moment, Murong increased his speed and charged towards Black Lotus. Rumble! At this moment, a gigantic hand appeared and covered the sky. It contained a terrifying force as it crushed the void and pressed down on Murong. A celestial duke. Murong expression changed drastically when he sensed the terrifying force. Immediately, he threw out the Yin-Yang cauldron to attack the giant hand. He wanted to weaken the power of the giant hand. At the same time, he took out the He-Tu and the inscription of the Luo. They floated above his head and shone down rays of light, enveloping his entire body and protecting him firmly. The Yin-Yang flames burst out and burned the entire void. The opponent that the immortal monarch realm expert had created had a huge hole burned in it. However, due to Murong haste, the Yin-Yang flame did not cover a large area. Although a portion of the Yin-Yang flame was burned, a portion of the Yin-Yang flame still managed to suppress the Yin-Yang flame and hit the He-Tu Luo Shu. The He-Tu Luo Shu was the most mystical treasure in the world. The strength of a celestial duke was not enough to destroy it. However, the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo wouldn't be damaged. As the owner of the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo, Murong would have to endure a certain amount of power. After all, with his current strength, he would not be able to unleash the He-Tu Luo Shu's defensive capabilities. Once the strength exceeded the limit of the He-Tu Luo Shu, the remaining strength will be transferred to Murong's body. Murong would have to bear the brunt of the attack. Spurt. It was as though a divine mountain had crashed into Murong's body. The terrifying strength almost crushed Murong's body. Fortunately, his physical body had reached the level of an 8th-grade immortal artifact. However, even so, Murong's body was still torn apart by the attack. Horrifying wounds appeared all over his body. Some of Murong's meridians were even shattered. Splash! Just as Murong was about to vomit blood from the impact, the frightening power suppressed him, causing him to fall into the lake. At the same time, more than 10 figures appeared outside the lake. They were the Celestial Duke experts from the Clearstream sect and the other forces. The one who had just attacked was the Celestial Duke expert from the White Mystery sect. This kid is pretty strong. However, it's a pity. The Celestial Duke from the Clearstream sect sighed. The Celestial Duke from the White Mystery sect looked at the Celestial Duke from the Clearstream sect coldly and said, "Don't tell me you want to be recruited by him to the Clearstream sect and become your disciple." The Celestial Duke shook his head and said, "Haha, that kid managed to kill a Celestial King with the strength of an overarching heavenly supreme celestial. I can't help but be tempted by such a talent. It's just a pity that he's probably already dead by now." Another immortal monarch shook his head and sighed. They believed it would be a miracle if Murong could survive the attack of the Celestial Duke from the White Mystery sect. The treasure on this kid's body is pretty good. You're not allowed to snatch it from me. The Celestial Duke from the White Mystery sect could not help but feel excited when he thought about the Yin-Yang cauldron that had burned the giant hand that he had conjured earlier. Therefore, he reached out his hand and grabbed the bottom of the lake where Murong had fallen. This was because the Yin-Yang cauldron had also fallen to the bottom of the lake. Upon seeing this, the other Celestial Dukes were slightly envious. However, they did not say anything. Chapter 581. Splash! Just as Xieze's hand was about to reach for the Yin-Yang Universe cauldron, the lake suddenly exploded, and a figure rose into the air. It was none other than Xieze, the Celestial Duke from the White Mystery sect. After seeing this scene, he was first stunned, then his face darkened. That was because he saw that the person who'd suddenly jumped out of the water was Murong-yu. Murong-yu, whom they thought had already been killed, was still alive. Xia Zhe's expression darkened. After all, Murong-yu was only an overarching, heavenly supreme celestial. Xia Zhe had intended to kill Murong-yu with a single blow. Initially, he and the others thought Murong-yu had been killed. But now, Murong-yu was standing right in front of them. Wasn't this a form of mockery towards Xia Zhe? Feeling humiliated, Bai Zhe snorted coldly. With a flip of his hand, he made a grab for Murong-yu. Murong-yu's expression darkened as well. Previously, he had suffered a blow from Xia Zhe that had left him half dead. However, due to his life force, his injuries had healed quickly. Killing intent surged in Murong-yu's heart when he saw Xia Zhe charging at him again. However, Xia Zhe was a celestial duke after all. Although Murong-yu could kill a celestial king, he was no match for a celestial duke. For this reason, he did not retaliate even though killing intent surged in his heart. Instead, he swayed his body and charged toward the Black Lotus in the lake at his fastest speed. At this moment, Murong-yu no longer cared about the dangers in the lake. If he did not retrieve the Black Lotus before the Celestial Dukes made their move, Murong-yu would no longer have anything to do with the Black Lotus. Once Xia Zhe and the others made a move, unless there was something extremely terrifying in the lake that even they were afraid of, the Black Lotus will be taken away by them very quickly. Because of this, Murong-yu didn't enter the He-Tu and Luo Shu. Instead, he directly charged towards the Black Lotus. Quick, stop him! Upon seeing Murong-yu recklessly charging toward the Black Lotus that was tens of thousands of miles away, the Celestial Dukes and the Celestial Dukes were shocked. However, their speed was not affected. Once Murong-yu charged forward with all his might, he would be able to reach the Black Lotus in less than a split second. Murong-yu could reach the Black Lotus in less than a split second. Therefore, the human Celestial Duke's expressions changed drastically when they saw Murong-yu's intention. Without hesitation, they extended their hands toward Murong-yu's direction. At the same time, they chased after Murong-yu. 1/100th of an instant was an extremely short amount of time. With Murong-yu flying at full speed, he had already arrived in front of the Black Lotus. With a whoosh, Murong-yu felt as if an invisible hand was sucking away a large amount of his soul. Even though it was only 1/100th of an instant, Murong-yu could feel his lifespan being greatly reduced. However, he was already in front of the Black Lotus. The Black Lotus leaves, the black roots, the Black Lotus seed pod, and the faint but refreshing fragrance. As he approached the Black Lotus, the fragrance became very strong. However, even though it was Murong-yu, it still smelled very good. It was an intoxicating feeling. Murong-yu, who was near the Black Lotus, suddenly had a feeling. He felt that the flow of time in the space near the Black Lotus was not fast. It was like the flow of time in the celestial realm. However, Murong-yu did not have time to figure out whether this was real or an illusion. At this moment, the attacks of the human Celestial Dukes were coming. What he needed to do now was... He reached out with his large hand and grabbed the Lotus Seed Pod at an extremely fast speed. Legend had it that although the Black Lotus was an extremely precious medicinal herb, the lotus seed it produced was the most precious. If it could revive a person, it would be the lotus seed of the Black Lotus. Therefore, Murong-yu immediately grabbed the Lotus Seed Pod. As long as he grabbed the Lotus Seed Pod, he would be able to enter the He-Chu Luo Shu space and teleport away. Of course, the premise was that the attacks of the human Celestial Dukes had not landed. Otherwise, once the attacks of the human Celestial Dukes came and shattered the void, Murong-yu would not be able to enter the He-Chu Luo Shu world. Then he would die. Even if he had the Black Lotus Seed, he would only die. Therefore, it was a race against time. Murong-yu was very fast. Before the attacks of the human Celestial Dukes could reach him, he had already grabbed the Lotus Seed Pod. Murong-yu was overjoyed. He used his large hand to tear the Lotus Seed Pod apart. However, at this moment, his expression changed. At this moment, a strong suction force exploded from the Lotus Seed Pod. Like a strong glue, it stuck Murong-yu's large hand firmly to the Lotus Seed Pod. Morong Yu's expression changed. However, he snorted angrily in his heart. He used his large hand to break the lotus seed pod. However, what shocked him was that the lotus seed pod was like a divine artifact. It was so hard and so powerful. Not to mention tearing it apart, it was impossible to even leave a mark on it. What's going on? Morong Yu was shocked. His face was filled with horror. At this moment, Sieze and the other human celestial duke's power poured down. Damn it, I'm finished. Morong Yu roared in his heart. Once Sieze and the other human celestial duke's power came down, he would die even if he had the Hichu Luo Shu. This was because he would not be able to hide in the Hichu Luo Shu. However, if he only relied on the Yin-Yang Cauldron and the Hichu Luo Shu to resist these powers, it would be impossible. Morong Yu wanted to use the Yin-Yang Bow and the Sky Shaking Arrow to kill these people. However, there was no time. The only thing he could do now was to enter the Hichu Luo Shu before these attacks landed on him and the space around him was torn apart. Otherwise, he would die. However, the black lotus seed pod stuck to his hand. Even if he used all his strength, he could not break free. Could the Yin-Yang fire burn this black lotus? Perhaps it could. However, Morong Yu did not have the time to do so. Gritting his teeth, Morong Yu used his other hand to chop off his hand that was stuck to the black lotus seed pod. Morong Yu was not deliberately harming himself. In fact, this was the best, fastest, and most direct way for him to break free from the black lotus seed pod. However, sometimes if a person wanted to harm himself, he would not succeed. There would be many obstacles that would prevent him from harming himself. Now, Morong Yu was facing such obstacles. Just as he was about to chop off his right hand to break free from the black lotus seed pod, he raised his left hand. One of the black lotus leaves wrapped around Morong Yu's left hand with a swoosh. Just like the lotus seed pod, after the black lotus leaf wrapped around Morong Yu's hand, Morong Yu realized that his hand was stuck firmly. He could not break free at all. At this moment, Sieze and the other immortal duke's attacks had already landed. It looked like they were about to kill Morong Yu. This is definitely the Black Lotus revenge. At this moment, this was the only thought that appeared in Morong Yu's mind. The Black Lotus entangled Morong Yu. This was most likely the reason why it was angry that Morong Yu wanted to pluck its lotus seed pod. It wanted to use Sieze and the other immortal dukes to kill Morong Yu. Even if Sieze and the other immortal dukes did not make a move, the Black Lotus would probably have other means to kill Morong Yu. This is the end. Sieze and the other immortal duke's attacks had already landed on Morong Yu's head. At this moment, even if Morong Yu used his strength to break his hands, he would not be able to escape. Even if he wanted to teleport back to the Huaxia cultivation world, he did not have the time. Am I going to die? Morong Yu sighed in his heart. He could not help but think of Zhao Jiqing, Yu Mengqing, Mu Liu, Li Ling, and all his other relatives and friends. At this moment, Morong Yu realized that he had not seen many of his friends for many years. He owed Zhao Jiqing and the others too much. Am I really going to die? Morong Yu could not help but roar in his heart. When a person was about to die, he would think of all kinds of things that had not been realized in time and all kinds of regrets. This was what was happening to Morong Yu now. It seemed like decades had passed, but in fact, all these flashed through Morong Yu's mind in less than a 10,000th of a second. At this moment, Sieze and the other immortal duke's attacks had already landed. In such a short time, no matter how many methods Morong Yu had, he would not be able to escape from Sieze and the other immortal duke's attacks. However, at this moment, just as the attacks were about to hit Morong Yu saw that the space he was in, strictly speaking, it was the space near the Black Lotus. The small space here actually started to distort. Waves of terrifying power bombarded down, but they were all deflected by the distorted space. Perhaps they were transferred to the turbulence of space. Rumble, the angry attacks of more than a dozen immortal dukes, could even blow off a sacred mountain. However, the attacks were directly deflected by the distorted space. Seeing the attacks of the immortal dukes above his head disappear, Morong Yu was a little stunned. This is the spatial law. the distorted space directly diverted the attacks of the other party. Even if they're not strong, they are definitely in an invincible position. Morongyu was extremely shocked, and so were Xieze and the others. This was the first time they had encountered such a strange method. A round of attacks came down, shattering the space not far from Black Lotus, and causing huge waves to rise in the lake. However, the space near the Black Lotus was not attacked at all. It was as if nothing had happened. The terrifying spatial law. Chapter 582. The attacks rained down from the sky. Even the Heaven Realm's divine mountain would have its peak blasted off. However, Morongyu and the Black Lotus were safe and sound. The terrifying attacks continued to bombard them. However, because the space was constantly distorting, the attacks were directly deflected or transferred into the space turbulence. Seeing this scene, Morongyu, Xieze, and the others were shocked. At the same time, they were shocked by the terror of the space rules. Everyone, let's attack together. I don't believe it can withstand our attacks forever, Xieze said with a gloomy face. The rest of the people nodded slightly. Then, an even more terrifying power bombarded down, trying to destroy the space rules. However, after half a day, Xieze and the others were discouraged. Although they had used their strongest attacks, they were still unable to attack Morongyu and the Black Lotus. The feeling of being unable to attack when they were right in front of their eyes made them feel very uncomfortable. They were so depressed that they wanted to vomit blood. Any defense has a limit. As long as we break this limit, no matter how terrifying their defense is, they won't be able to withstand our attacks. Clearstream Sec's immortal Master Pan Lin said in a deep voice. That should be the case. Although the defense is strange, I think as long as we continue to attack, we should be able to break it. Moreover, the Black Lotus is inside. Kong Pei from the Power Sect said. Part of their attack was to prevent Morongyu from obtaining the Black Lotus. At this moment, they also saw Morongyu's situation. It seemed that he was being suppressed by the Black Lotus. Therefore, they came to a conclusion. The Black Lotus was the one defending them. No matter how powerful the Black Lotus was, it was still a plant that could not move. It could only rely on its defensive methods. They firmly believed that once they were strong enough, they would be able to break the Black Lotus's defense. At that time, they would be able to obtain the Black Lotus seed. It was a heaven-defying item that could bring the dead back to life. When they thought of the Black Lotus seed, their hearts burned with passion. Even if Kong Pei and the others did not say so, they would not give up attacking. Therefore, the powerful force did not stop. Another half a day passed. They were already a little irritated by the attacks, but they could not do anything to the Black Lotus. This was because within the vicinity of the Black Lotus, the space was still distorted as before, transferring their power. It was as if it was effortless. At that moment, the people from the Clearstream Sect and the other sects arrived one after another. A few days later, all 7,000 to 8,000 people from these forces had arrived outside the lake. Originally, they had more than 10,000 people. In other words, they had lost almost half of their people when they reached the peak. While Pan Lin and the others were attacking, Morongyu also tried to break free from Black Blue's restraints. In the beginning, Morongyu was shocked when he saw Black Lotus block the attacks of Pan Lin and the others using the space law. However, he was also quite happy, because in this way, Pan Lin and the others' attacks would not be able to kill him. However, as time passed, Morongyu became more and more anxious. Therefore, he tried to break free from Black Lotus' attack. However, what made him depressed was that when he wanted to break the two hands that were stuck by the Black Lotus, the other leaf of the Black Lotus directly slapped over and wrapped around his body. In this way, Morongyu was completely doomed. Because his entire body was bound, it was difficult for him to even move, let alone break free from the Black Lotus's restraints. In this situation, no matter how heaven-defying Hichu Luoshu was, he could not enter. It could even be said that Morongyu, who was bound by the Black Lotus, had become one with it. Unless he moved the Black Lotus with him, He could not leave this place. The flow of time in the Black Lotus was the same as in the immortal world. In other words, even if Morong stayed here for a single thought, he would only spend 100 million years. However, if he could not break free from the Black Lotus's restraints, Morong 100 billion years of lifespan would be exhausted here. Morong became more and more depressed, because he did not know why the Black Lotus was binding him. Was it trying to kill him? However, Morong didn't sense any killing intent from the Black Lotus. Otherwise, with the Black Lotus's ability, Morong did not doubt that he would be thrown into the spatial turbulence without being able to resist. With his current strength, once he entered the spatial turbulence, he would not be able to survive for more than a moment. I say, Brother Black Lotus, why are you doing this? Look at all the people gathered outside. They are all here for your lotus seeds. You can't hold them off for much longer. You'd better let me go quickly and let me leave, okay? I promise I won't do anything to you. Morong was at his wit's end and began to talk to the Black Lotus. However, the Black Lotus was just a lotus. Could he understand Morong words? Morong did not have any doubts about this. The Black Lotus had lived for so many years and seemed to be quite powerful. It was impossible for him not to hear Morong words. However, what made Morong depressed was that Black Lotus didn't even bother with him. At this moment, everyone from the Clear Stream sect was preparing to attack. The full force attack of more than 10 immortal lords might not be able to do anything to the Black Lotus. However, what if there were 7,000 to 8,000 immortal kings and 9 heaven Shin immortals? With so many experts attacking, even an immortal emperor would not dare to just stand there and let them attack. Did the Black Lotus have the strength of an immortal emperor? In this regard, Morong was not optimistic about the Black Lotus's attack. Rumble, the power that filled the sky, carried a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth as it rushed down, enveloping the entire world. The terrifying power continued to erupt, annihilating the void and even the water in the lake. This is really frightening. Morong's heart trembled in fear as he looked at the incomparably terrifying energy that could easily tear him to shreds. His face had turned deathly pale. If Morong was an immortal sovereign, his expression wouldn't have changed at all in the face of this frightening power. However, he was only an overarching heavenly supreme celestial. Even a 9 heaven Shin immortal could tear him apart, let alone a celestial king or a celestial duke. Morong's heart skipped a beat when he saw the power that came crashing down on him. However, when the power was diverted away by the law of space, he could not help but feel relieved. However, the power that came crashing down on him was diverted away again. Morong's heart could not take it anymore. His heart was filled with trepidation, sorrow, and fear. At this moment, he could only pray that the Black Lotus was powerful enough to block the attacks of these people. However, Morong soon thought of a problem. They had discovered the Black Lotus, but they could not take him down. Would they inform the powerhouses in their respective forces? If that was the case, more powerhouses would come. At that time, there would definitely be celestial emperors who would come. As time passed, news about the Black Lotus would spread. At that time, the entire celestial realm would be alarmed. At that time, countless powerhouses would flock to the celestial realm. Morong felt incomparably depressed when he thought of that terrifying scene. No matter how powerful the Black Lotus was, he could not possibly fight against all the powerhouses in the celestial realm, right? This was especially true since the Black Lotus could only defend himself. He did not even have any means to attack. The more Morong thought about it, the more depressed he became. Now that he was bound to the Black Lotus, if the Black Lotus could not defeat him, he would definitely die. Morong looked up to the sky and roared, "What's going on?" However, Morong was slightly relieved when he saw Pan Lin and the others were still unable to break the Black Lotus's attack, despite the combined attack of 8,000 powerhouses. Brother Black Lotus, Senior Black Lotus, what are you trying to do? You should at least let me know, right? Otherwise, I will die without knowing why. Morong fell helpless and began to speak to the Black Lotus. However, He originally thought that the Black Lotus would ignore him after he spoke this time. What shocked him was that before he finished speaking, he saw an inexplicable force surging into his body. Black force. This was the Black Lotus's force. This force was somewhat similar to Murong Yu's chaotic force, but it seemed to be more powerful and purer than Murong Yu's chaotic force. Could this be the purer and more powerful chaotic force? Murong Yu thought in shock. Although he was a chaotic, celestial body, his force was chaotic force. However, he also knew that his chaotic force was not the most powerful. This was because his chaotic force was not the purest compared to the most powerful chaotic force in the world. However, as he became stronger, his chaotic force would become purer and more powerful. Obviously, the Black Lotus's force was much purer and more powerful than Murong Yu's current force. While Murong Yu was deep in thought, his entire body and mind shook violently. This was because at this moment, his chaotic celestial body record actually started to operate at an extremely fast speed. Originally, the chaotic celestial body record was operating automatically, so Murong Yu did not need to deliberately cultivate it to achieve the goal of increasing his strength. However, at this moment, Murong Yu realized that the chaotic celestial body record was operating at a much faster speed than usual. Moreover, it was operating faster and faster. Murong Yu could even see that the chaotic celestial body record, which had been unable to break through for a long time, seemed to be loosening a little. It seemed to be about to break through. Is this because of the Black Lotus? Murong Yu was extremely shocked. This was because he realized that the chaotic celestial body record had started to operate crazily because of the Black Lotus's force. Chapter 583. Under the guidance of the Black Lotus, the chaotic celestial record began to operate crazily. The speed of operation was many times faster than when Murong Yu had been cultivating previously. Furthermore, the speed of operation was still increasing rapidly, becoming faster and faster. During this process, Murong Yu felt that the chaotic celestial record seemed to be about to break through. Murong Yu was overjoyed at this turn of events. No matter what the situation was, a breakthrough in one's strength was always delightful. Moreover, a breakthrough in strength was of great significance to Murong Yu. Not to mention that he would be able to get out of his current predicament after a breakthrough in strength. More importantly, once his strength broke through, his life force would evolve and become even more powerful. When that time came, it would be easier for Yu Mengqing's soul to recover. The more powerful he was, the lower the chances of Yu Mengqing dying. Immediately, Murong Yu, who felt that he was about to break through, began to cultivate. Murong Yu, who had entered a state of cultivation, didn't notice that the Black Lotus had loosened its restraints on him at some point in time. In fact, streams of energy were continuously flowing into Murong Yu's body, driving the chaotic celestial record to operate. What's going on? How can there be a power that can drive the chaotic celestial record to operate? In the Hichu Luoshu, Hichu was shocked. Ever since he had been conscious for so many years, he had never seen such a situation. The chaotic celestial record was the most powerful and demanding cultivation method in the world. This kind of cultivation method could only be broken through by relying on the cultivator's own strength. It was impossible to rely on external forces to break through. The current situation was indeed beyond Hichu's expectations. It's so fast. It's already hundreds of times faster than usual. Looking at Murong Yu, who was in a meditative state, and the chaotic celestial record was constantly operating at a high speed, Hichu frowned slightly. The faster the cultivation method was operating, the greater the effect it could produce. However, there was a limit to everything. If the speed exceeded this limit, not only would there be no benefits, but the cultivator's physical body would also be directly crushed by the terrifying speed. It was equivalent to chi deviation. At this moment, the chaotic celestial record was still increasing in speed. Although it was still within the range of what Murong Yu could endure for the time being, If it continued to develop, Muronyu would definitely explode and die. At this moment, Muronyu did not feel the terror of the rapid circulation of the cultivation method. On the contrary, he was overjoyed by the benefits brought about by the rapid circulation of his cultivation method. The chaotic celestial record, which had been stagnant for a long time, was like a boulder blocking Muronyu's path, preventing him from moving forward. But at this moment, the boulder began to loosen. Muronyu could even see the edges of the boulder being ground away bit by bit. As long as the boulder was almost worn away, Muronyu would be able to cross the boulder and move forward. Once he crossed this boulder, it would be time for him to break through. Streams of terrifying power continued to bombard the boulder like raging waves, trying to break it apart. At the same time, some comprehensions that he had never had before also appeared in Muronyu's mind. This was an understanding of the cultivation method, a deeper level of comprehension. After an unknown amount of time, the chaotic celestial record in Muronyu's body circulated at a speed 1,000 times faster than usual. Such a terrifying circulation speed made Muronyu's meridians feel like they were about to burst. Obviously, the cultivation method's circulation speed had reached its limit. If Muronyu did not break through and the cultivation method circulation speed continued to increase, he would definitely explode and die. Boom! Just as Muronyu's meridians were about to burst, a loud sound suddenly came from Muronyu's body. Almost at the same time, the boulder that was blocking Muronyu's breakthrough exploded and turned into dust. Muronyu's strength and cultivation base finally broke through the boulder's obstruction and arrived in a new space. A new realm appeared in front of Muronyu. Muronyu had finally broken through. He had finally reached the third stage of the second level of the chaotic celestial record. As soon as he reached the third stage of the second level of the chaotic celestial record, Muronyu's cultivation base had also broken through. He had successfully broken through from the overarching heavenly supreme celestial stage to the great overarching golden celestial stage. The great overarching golden celestial stage was the dividing line between the celestial world's experts and ordinary celestials. Once one entered the great overarching golden celestial stage, not only would one's strength skyrocket, but one's status would also be much higher than an overarching heavenly supreme celestial. After all, the difference between an expert and an ordinary person was very obvious. Generally, celestials who had reached the great overarching golden celestial stage could fly freely in the void of the celestial world. He broke through. At this moment, Pan Lin and the others had stopped attacking. They discovered that no matter how they attacked, they could not do anything to Black Lotus. Their attacks were all diverted into the spatial turbulence by the Black Lotus's law of space. Xieze and the others were slightly depressed when they saw Muronyu had broken through. They had been attacking with all their might, but Black Lotus had broken through because of their attacks. What was this? Kong Pei suddenly said in a deep voice, "Could it be that the Black Lotus has a secret that can help people break through?" He discovered that Muronyu's strength did not stop after he broke through to the great overarching golden celestial stage. Instead, he continued to break through. In just a short time, Muronyu had broken through from the early stage of the great overarching golden celestial stage to the late stage of the great overarching golden celestial stage. The speed of his strength improvement is terrifying. Is it really because of the Black Lotus? Everyone looked at the Black Lotus fervently, thinking that it was all the credit of the Black Lotus. If I can obtain this Black Lotus, won't I be able to break through to the Celestial Emperor stage? Or even the Celestial Venerate stage? Or even break through and become a god? All the immortal monarchs, immortal kings, and 9 heavens Xian immortals were excited. They could not wait to rush over and take the Black Lotus for themselves. However, none of them dared to do so. Not to mention that it was still a problem for them to get close to the Black Lotus. Once they approached it rashly, the people around them would probably kill them. How is it? Is there a way to take the Black Lotus? Pan Lin and the others discussed through voice transmission. Not only did the Black Lotus seed have the effect of resurrecting the dead, but also because the Black Lotus could help people break through. Maybe we don't need to attack. We can just walk over and try to take the Black Lotus. However, that kid actually got the help of the Black Lotus. Could it be that he has made some agreement with the Black Lotus? Or has the Black Lotus already recognized him as its master? I don't think so. See, as he muttered to himself, everyone saw it. That kid was bound by the Black Lotus earlier. Later, for some reason, he began to break through. It's possible that he made some kind of agreement with the Black Lotus or obtained some benefits from the Black Lotus. No, we must stop him as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'm afraid we won't get anything. How we stop it? Our attacks are unable to do anything to them, an immortal monarch said gloomily. Could it be that he sent a voice transmission to the people in the sect? However, if that was the case, it was hard to guarantee that they would not be discovered by the other forces. If that's the case, then I'm afraid we won't even have the right to touch the Black Lotus anymore, another immortal lord said in a depressed manner. If that wasn't the case, these sects wouldn't have only sent so many people. And once this news spread out, all the big sects and forces would definitely make a big fuss. At that time, it would be discovered by the people of other forces. Don't send a message to them yet. Let's see if we can take down this Black Lotus first. If there's really no other way, we can only send a message to the experts of our sect to come over, Pan Lin said in a deep voice. Immortal King, one immortal king should go and try. If possible, then go near the Black Lotus and kill that kid. Sieze said in a deep voice because she saw that Murong Yu's strength was much stronger than before. It would not be long before he would directly enter the late stage of perfected Golden Immortal. In less than half a day, Duan Ling Tian had entered the late stage of perfected Golden Immortal from the overarching Heavenly Supreme Celestial stage. Pan Lin and the others were envious of Duan Ling Tian's terrifying speed of improvement. This was all because of the Black Lotus. They all thought to themselves. However, was the Black Lotus really that amazing? Yes, the Black Lotus was indeed amazing. Naturally, the Black Lotus was not as amazing as they had imagined. What they did not know was that every time Murong had a breakthrough, he would directly break through to the highest stage. Every time, he would directly break through 3 stages. This was one of the great benefits of the chaotic celestial record. The only amazing thing about the Black Lotus was that it could drive the chaotic celestial record to allow Murong to break through to the next stage. At this moment, the energy of the Black Lotus was still driving the chaotic celestial record to operate at a speed that was a few thousand times faster than before. However, after Murong breakthrough, his meridians and body had been tempered again and were much stronger than before. His body, in particular, had broken through to the grade of a grade 9 celestial weapon. If he advanced one more step, he would be able to become a royal weapon. At this moment, Murong body was rapidly advancing to the royal weapon level. His body was constantly getting stronger, and Murong meridians had also expanded by hundreds of times. Therefore, although the chaotic celestial record was operating at a speed that was a few thousand times faster than before, his meridians no longer felt swollen. Rumble, the chaotic celestial record, was directly pushed to the peak of the 3rd stage of the 2nd stage. As long as he broke through this stage, he would be able to step into the 3rd stage. It corresponded to the 9 heavens, Xian immortal, to the immortal supremacy realm. At this moment, Murong was burning with passion as he quickly operated the chaotic celestial record. He wanted to break through to the 3rd stage of the chaotic celestial record. Chapter 584. Under Murong control and the guidance of the Black Lotus, the power of Murong cultivation method circulated faster and faster. Even though he had just broken through and his meridians had been widened a lot, they could not even accommodate such a terrifying speed. At this time, Murong was still ignorant and continued to break through to the next realm. Seeing the scene, Hichu was very anxious. Every time the chaotic celestial record broke through, Murong strength would skyrocket. However, The strength of the chaotic celestial record was different from that of the immortal world. Every time the chaotic celestial record broke through, Muron Yu's strength would skyrocket. However, it was impossible for the chaotic celestial record to increase several realms at once. Of course, this was not absolute, but at least Muron Yu could not do it now. This was because the strength of his physical body had reached the limit that he could bear at this time. Even if the chaotic celestial record broke through again, Muron Yu's body would explode because it could not bear the skyrocketing power after the breakthrough. Seeing that the chaotic celestial record was circulating faster and faster, Muron Yu's body was about to explode, but Muron Yu was still breaking through to the next realm. Hichu could not help but be very anxious. Muron Yu. He too suddenly let out a loud roar. Muron Yu, who was circulating his martial arts with all his strength, was suddenly awakened by Hichu's roar. Immediately, he realized that his body was about to explode. Therefore, he hurriedly stopped the circulation of the cultivation method. After Muron Yu woke up, the power of the Black Lotus suddenly disappeared. It was as if the power of the Black Lotus had only appeared to help Muron Yu break through to the next realm. Boom! Muron Yu had just woken up, and before he could react from the lingering fear, an extremely powerful aura suddenly erupted from his body. Then, the void above his head was torn apart, and incomparably ferocious coiled dragons kept drilling out of the void. 5,000, 6,000, 7,000. The power of 7,000 coiling dragons. In the blink of an eye, 7,000 coiling dragons appeared above Muron Yu's head. Each and every one of the black coiling dragons seemed to have materialized as they circled around in the air, letting out incorporeal roars. An invisible pressure spread out in all directions. 7,000 coiling dragon powers. Seeing this scene, the several thousand immortals outside the lake were all dumbstruck. They had expressions of disbelief on their faces. One must know that the limit of an ordinary golden immortal's coiling dragon power was only 3,000 dragon power. Even 9 heavens Xian immortals only had 6,000 coiling dragon power. As for Muron Yu, a great golden immortal, his dragon power was terrifying. He directly crossed the 9 heavens Xian immortal realm and reached the immortal king realm. Even in the immortal king realm, 7,000 coiling dragon power was considered a mid-tier immortal king. In principle, the coiling dragon power of an immortal king was usually between 6 to 10,000. However, most people's coiling dragon power was below 8,000. Those who could reach 8,000 were definitely peerless geniuses. There were very few of them. In Muron, you had such powerful strength at the golden immortal realm. Then what level was he? A peerless genius? A monster-level existence? Even a monster-level expert was far from Muron Yu. Slap! A 9 heavens Xian immortal was sent flying by a 9 heavens Xian immortal beside him. F***CK, what are you doing? The 9 heavens Xian immortal, who was in shock, was suddenly sent flying by his companion, which made him very angry. I just wanted to see if this was a dream. But now it seems that it's not a dream. But is that kid really only a perfected golden immortal? F***CK, of course it's true, although I don't believe it either. But who is this guy? His realm is lower than ours, but his coiling dragon power is much higher than ours. The 9 heavens Xian immortal who was sent flying said with a depressed face. Ordinary 9 heavens Xian immortals only had 6,000 coiling dragon power at most, and their coiling dragon power was only between 3,000 to 4,500. Their strength was not considered strong. The 9 heavens Xian immortals were definitely not the most depressed people present, but the Immortal King realm experts. This was because many of the Immortal King realm experts present found that although they were 2 realms higher than Muron Yu, their coiling dragon power was not as much as his. Although the coiling dragon power was not absolute, it was stronger. But the stronger the coiling dragon power, the stronger the strength. This was without a doubt. Even a few immortal monarchs were shocked at this moment. The eyes of Xieze of the White Profound sect, who had dealt with Muron Yu before, flashed with a cold light. He had almost killed Muron Yu before. and there was already enmity between them. If it were him, he would not let Murong-Yu go. And Murong-Yu's talent was so heaven-defying. He was only a golden immortal, but he had the strength of an immortal king realm expert. Once he grew into an immortal king, which was the immortal monarch realm, Xieze would definitely not be a match for him. Moreover, once Murong-Yu grew, their white profound sect might be destroyed because of today's incident. After all, Murong-Yu's talent was too terrifying, and this did not include the forces behind him. Moreover, with his talent, as long as the news of him becoming a disciple was released, the three magnates would try their best to rope him in. Once this happened, the White Profound sect would not be a match for Murong-Yu even if they were several times stronger. He must die. Xieze's eyes flashed with a cold light, and his heart was filled with killing intent. He had already made up his mind to kill Murong-Yu. However, except for Xieze, the other immortal monarchs were all thinking about whether it was possible to rope Murong-Yu into their own forces. Boom! While everyone was shocked or had the intention to kill or wanted to rope in Murong-Yu, a loud sound was heard again. The void above Murong-Yu's head, which had already calmed down, was torn apart again. The shadow of a coiled dragon drilled out of the void. The dragon power is still increasing. Seeing this scene, the people outside were even more shocked and incredulous. Who is this kid? Countless people were shouting in their hearts. They had already been shocked by Murong-Yu and felt inferior. Shadows of coiled dragons drilled out of the void one after another. In a short while, the void above Murong-Yu's head had already gathered 7,500 coiled dragon shadows. 7,500 dragon power. Looking at the coiled dragon shadows above Murong-Yu's head, the people outside had already gone from being shocked to feeling incredulous to being numb. It was as if even if Murong-Yu had a few hundred more dragon power, they would not be surprised. This kid must die. He must die. Xieze kept roaring in his heart, and killing intent surged from his body. 7,500 dragon power, a 9th grade immortal artifact level physical body. At this moment, Murong-Yu finally reacted. Then, he laughed loudly and took back the dragon power. I wonder how much my lifespan has increased. After entering the immortal realm, Murong-Yu's lifespan had been consumed a lot. Although a few 100 million years of lifespan was not much, it was actually quite a lot. 400 billion years of lifespan. It's actually 100 billion years more than the lifespan of an immortal king. After Murong-Yu felt his lifespan, his face was filled with shock. He was also shocked by his own lifespan. A golden immortal only had a lifespan of 10 billion years, and a 9-heaven mystic immortal had a lifespan of 100 billion years. After reaching the immortal king realm, one's lifespan would increase by 3 times, reaching 300 billion years. Murong-Yu now had a lifespan of 400 billion years. It was only 100 billion years less than the immortal monarch realm experts. This shocked him. In fact, Murong-Yu did not dare to imagine if his lifespan would break through an era after reaching the immortal monarch realm. As long as one did not become a god, one's lifespan would only be an era at most. This was an eternal law. Others have a lifespan of 300 billion years after reaching the immortal king realm, but I already have a lifespan of 400 billion years as a golden immortal. How can those immortal kings endure this? After the shock, Murong-Yu laughed out loud. Strength, physical body, lifespan, life force. Everything is much stronger than before. Murong-Yu was full of joy. What surprised him the most was not his strength, but his life force had also advanced. It had a stronger recovery ability and a more surging life force. With my current life force, even if I can't find the soul grass in a short period of time, Mengqing's soul should be able to hold on for a longer time. Murong-Yu's eyes flickered with a cold light. When he thought of you, Mengqing, he thought of the person who had attacked him back then. I hope Steward Ma can help me find something. Murong-Yu suppressed the killing intent in his heart. Before this, he had already asked Steward Ma to investigate this matter. Although Steward Ma could not leave the Heavenly Penalty Palace, he had a lot of energy. The Heavenly Tribulation is here. Morong raised his head and looked at the sky. At this moment, the wind and clouds in the sky had changed, and the tribulation clouds covered the sky. Now is not a good time to transcend the tribulation. Morong glanced at Black Lotus beside him and suppressed the power in his body, temporarily suppressing the heavenly tribulation. This heavenly tribulation was not the usual kind of heavenly tribulation. The heaven realm of a golden immortal was a 6 in 9 heavenly tribulation. When Zhao Jiqing was transcending the tribulation, it was earth-shattering and soul-stirring. Morong was afraid that his heavenly tribulation would be so terrifying. Therefore, he would not transcend the tribulation before he was prepared. However, what made Morong depressed was that how could he leave here? Not to mention the many experts outside who were eyeing him covetously. Even if Black Lotus was here, Morong could not leave. As soon as he thought of leaving here, Morong realized that Black Lotus did not seem to continue to bind him. Black Lotus? Can I leave now? Morong could not help but ask. Originally, Morong was just asking casually. He thought that Black Lotus would be the same as before and not have any response. However, before he could finish his sentence, he saw the 3 leaves of the Black Lotus and the Black Lotus pod shake a few times as if they were nodding their heads. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.